news recently, so we're going to talk about that. Roe versus Wade. So my question to the group is, obviously, after the decision was linked a few months ago, or I think maybe it just was a month ago, we all kind of knew this was coming in the near future. We thought it was going to be 6-3, ended up being 5-4, the decision. Uh, my question is, how do you think this Roe versus Wade being overturned is going to affect the country? How do you think it's rolling out? And how are you reacting to the recent news? It's a general topic on Roe versus Wade. So I'm going to throw it over to, I think I'll go Taft first.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, I'll just start by saying that these topics are sort of difficult to have because you end up discussing Roe v. Wade on a lot of different levels, sort of at the same time. So I'll just try to quickly address what I think are like the three levels in which people talk about it. And first is the legal level. So I'm of the opinion that Roe v. Wade was poor legal ruling. And from the standpoint of constitutional law, it probably makes sense to overturn it. The only problem here is that it gets into a little bit of dicey territory when you start overturning really old cases.
Get some help.
But I think Roe v. Wade is one case where that's justifiable just because there's so much division on it. So that's the first level. Second is the moral level. I don't believe that abortion is immoral. Even if I grant that fetuses are persons, I believe killing is sometimes morally justified, and abortion is one of those cases. There's a wealth of sociological literature which suggests that access to abortion has positive social effects, namely on reduction of violent crime. So personally, if I had my own state and were writing laws, I would allow abortion access. But then a third, I think, is the federal policy level. I don't think that federal government should issue countrywide bans or protections for abortions. Most of the men and women in red states where abortion is being restricted actually are in favor of those restrictions. And I think if you want to organize a community and ban abortion within or after a certain amount of time, as long as those laws are within the bounds of the Constitution, I think that community should be able to. The ability for people to self-organize into communities of like-minded individuals is really a strength of federalism, and it's something that's bounded by the right to exit at any time. So that's sort of my position on what I think are the three relevant levels of the abortion discussion.
Okay. I'm now going to throw it over to Kevin Logan.
Yeah, I think this is a genuinely awful decision. It sets a phenomenally bad precedent and opens the floodgates for any number of other rights for American citizens to be stripped away. The Supreme Court has essentially turned itself into a six-person theocratic council, which gets to just decide what rights people have. They're clearly given Clarence Thomas's notes on this. He's stated openly that he thinks they should go back and look at things like gay marriage and contraception, etc., etc. And this is what they're going to do from now on, it appears, is essentially leak ahead of time their plans. People will then say, don't worry, they're not actually going to do that, and then go ahead and fucking do that and strip away people's rights. It's a genuinely worrying precedent, and I fear for the direction of America.
Throw it over to Turk.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with a lot of the basis Taj said, but I don't agree on the moral grounds. As a Christian, I believe in pro-life stances, but I do believe that there is a necessity for allowing certain exceptions to apply, because there's situations which people don't volunteer to be part of that entire process. They shouldn't have to be forced to partake in the entire process. However, I do agree, though, that in those instances, they could give the kid away for adoption or some other form of non-lethal method for the infant child to be, a functioning person of society. But I agree. I think federalism is a great thing. I believe the media and the Democratic establishment have twisted the narrative in a way that is both toxic as well as disingenuous to the actual facts of the case. And I really wish people understood more about what federalism is, what that actually means, all the violence that's going on in Washington, California, New York. Those are states that still allow for abortion for pretty extensive pieces of time. So I'm really interested to see the different angles people want to talk about it, and really interested to see where it goes.
Okay, now we're going to throw it over to counterpoints.
Yeah, so the impact, as far as I can tell, is going to be like how it affects the country long term. These are kind of my predictions, however dog shit they are. Please feel free to hold me accountable to them in the future. I think conservatives are going to overplay their hands on the state level. So, for instance, like we're already seeing that in Mississippi and Louisiana, where they don't even have exceptions for rape and incest. They literally just have health of the mother as the only exception for an abortion. So I think that's going to be an overplay, and we're going to see some horror stories coming out of red states where people either have incest or rape stories and can't get access to an abortion. They fly out of state, they get harassed by law enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's going to happen in the red states. And then I'm also worried about a blue state backlash where they're basically like, oh yeah, 8.5 months viable pregnancy, who gives a shit? And then that's just going to deepen the propaganda on both sides to even worse, like, partisan splits than we already have. Then, I think this is going to radicalize purple states in particular. I live in Florida, and Florida, we already see like a Roe versus Wade pushback where Democrats seem to be energized. So we might see some of the active like Republican swing that we would be expecting for the midterms get blunted by Roe versus Wade getting passed. So we might actually see the Democrats not necessarily like maintain their majorities, but they might be able to blunt what would typically be Republican momentum. And then going forward, I think there's probably like a 50-50 shot of Democrats breaking the filibuster in order to pass like a federal abortion protection legislation. I don't think it's going to happen, but they technically could. But then I'm worried about that opening up the floodgates where at that point, if they break the filibuster in order to pass federal abortion legislation, then at that point, we only need a 51-49 vote at the Senate in order to pass law. And I think that's going to seesaw the country into an even worse partisan split than we already are. So, could be fun. I think we're a little fucked, and not in a good way.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Malcolm.
I think that the overturning of Roe v. Wade is kind of like Kevin was talking about, going to be a slippery slope into a whole bunch of like terrible shit, kind of setting the precedent that we can look at older cases and kind of overturn them, kind of how they're kind of alluding to going for gay marriage next and contraception. I think that's big bad. I think that on the morality issue of abortion, even the Bible in Genesis talks about life beginning at first breath. I think as far as it's concerned, I know that Counterpoints brought up the idea of kind of like the idea of medical necessity, where there are states that aren't making any of these exceptions for like the health of the mother or in cases of like incest or rape. I think that anybody who is reasonable thinks that this is absolutely fucking ridiculous. And within the context of like life-saving medicine, I think that we're all pretty familiar with the American healthcare system being really slow at approving medically necessary treatments. So if you have a woman who has like an ectopic pregnancy or something and she's going to die, kind of going through the process in order to get that abortion, she might as well just die waiting for that to happen. Overall, I think kind of the overturning of this sets a really scary precedent that we're going to go back to all of these rulings and revisit them in a really negative way, and that a lot of people are going to die, a lot of people are going to be in jail, and a lot of people are just going to have a lower quality of life just because of this decision. And yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to throw this over to, I guess it's true.
Okay. Fuck. You guys said so much. There's so much to bounce off of. Well, my position is that it is murder. But it should be legal. I think what's happening right now with Roe v. Wade, I went to look up because I'm Canadian, so it's very different for us here. But so I went to check about the law and why what happened. And I guess I understand why they overturned Roe v. Wade, but at the same time, I do feel like there's enough talented people in the world to make the case
it's illegal.
For a better case. Because basically they chose to do Roe v. Wade. It was like in Texas, which was one of the most toughest laws on abortion, and
legal murder.
If you would instead go about it in a different way, I think there's a way to ratify it and like to protect the mother over the baby in the law, and for it, even if it's murder, to be like legal. But I feel like if it's just people butting heads, we'll never get there. Like here in Canada, like people do think it's a baby, but we can still abort them. The thing is, like, I think people are just more careful not to get pregnant because they know that it's a baby. So I think maybe that's why a lot of people get like butt heads a lot. I feel like everyone's trying to be overly radical to make their points instead of seeing that in the middle we're actually we're able to agree on a lot more than it seems. Like even in this conversation here, there's not really a full on like pro like you're gonna have your rape baby like in the room. So I don't know. I think there's ways to move further ahead than we are, and I feel like politicians don't want us to do that. They want us to keep fighting on this very basic moment in time, and like I think we should break away from that and keep it legal. That's what I think.
Genevieve? Oh, Genevieve?
Hi, thanks. As True mentioned, there has been a lot brought up. Obviously, Taft talked about it kind of on a 3 different level basis, and I think that's really accurate. There are so many different ways this conversation can go, and a lot of you have made really valid points so far. I believe, along with the majority of Americans, as most studies have shown, that abortion should be accessible and safe. And I think that it does come down to the idea of, is it a life or is it a potential life? And at what point do we make that distinction? And the existing determinations of Roe v. Wade and then Casey that came later did allow for a balance for states to look out for the interest of this potential life while still allowing, for women to have access to abortion, at the very least, up to a certain point. And again, I think that that's something that most people do agree on, is that at least in the beginning, it's not as much of a debate if somebody is getting an early abortion. A lot of people will feel better with that because it's not as much of a viable life at that point. I think that it's also important to recognize that cellular life on the same conversation, cellular life is very different than a viable organism. So while we would be killing alive cells, I think that looking at it as murder is not really the best terminology or phrasing. There are obviously instances where we kill things and it's not murder, and I think this is definitely one of them. I think that this ruling is going to have a lot of dangerous consequences, and it was done in a way that is going to make the burden of seeking out this healthcare more difficult for women who are already disenfranchised. And I think that that's something that really needs to be addressed as well.
Johnny Scarlett?
Hey, what's up? Hi, if no one's ever seen me before, my name is Johnny. I'm an educational streamer, and we talk about things like philosophy and consciousness and AI on a regular basis. Because of that, abortion comes up a fair amount, and I've done a fair amount of research into what someone who does, for instance, neural networking might call the shape of consciousness. It's about input-output feedback loops. And so the capacity to have that ability, that feedback loop ability, grows exponentially over time when a fetus is gestating, right? So we have something where we might have to have a tiered morality system, a medically individualized morality system for people who are seeking a medical situation where they might be getting rid of a baby, where they might be aborting a baby that's not going to come to term alive. Because of this, I believe that approximately 10 to 15 weeks into the gestation process of a fetus is an appropriate time for an abortion, regardless of whether that baby will come to term eventually. And of course, again, that grows exponentially as we get into the input ability of that fetus. As it grows, we think about it differently. And I think that tiered morality scale needs to be a little bit more common in medical situations like this. And I think I'll stop it here because it seems like a lot of people have already said some of the more obvious stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you all for coming for this pretty big topic. So we've allotted a lot of time for this. It's now an open discussion. Anybody can start us off. I'll only interfere if it gets really out of hand. Good luck.
So I want to address at the top Malcolm's claim that in the Bible it says God breathed air into them, and that's when life happens. That is when Adam's life started, because he was created from the ground and the earth that was below him. And then whenever Eve was created and then they sinned and the fall of man happened, then they were told to go forth and multiply. Not you're going to breathe more air and create more people.
He might
They're gonna
be
start creating more
So-
people through
He might
the
be
procreation
mistaking it for the
process.
Talmud, which does say that like pretty.
Yeah,
Who
so
gives
Genesis
a
2:7, Job
fuck?
33:4, and Ezekiel 37 4-5 all talks about how
And
life is
then
created
Psalm
and breathed into
130
every
And then
individual
Psalm
by God.
139, for you were formed in my inward parts, you were covered
Oh,
me
boy.
in your warm's mother's womb.
Theology.
Babies are created before they are actually put into the world.
I'm just
as-
going to stick
or-
with the big man and agree that life begins at
What-
first breath. I'm just going to stick with the big man on that one.
Well,
I know
you're
that's a
reading
Jewish
false-
Wait,
Bible.
wait,
I don't know about
Wait,
Christianity, though.
That's a false teaching.
wait, please. Oh no, please.
Heresy.
Okay, wait. I want to make stop. Okay, hey, we're all a little heretical tonight. Okay, we're on the Hippy Dippy show, but I want to make sure that Turk has some time to respond. I want to make sure I can hear what he had to say.
No, I mean, it's what he's speaking is false teachings. It's not in the way it's interpreted. There's plenty of other passages in the Bible that refer to a child that's in the womb being created by God for a purpose, and that child is meant to be a creation. It's not only a creation once it's been born into this world, and that's why, as a Christian, killing that baby is a act of murder, and it's ending of a life.
Well,
Do you think that
exactly.
there were pregnant... Wait, hang on. Do you think that there were pregnant women on the earth when God flooded it?
Yes, there were.
Oh, it sounds like God is pro-abortion based. Next argument.
Can I just say,
boy.
I don't
If I
look.
can just interject here, I don't know why we're even
Conversation
having
went far.
biblical or other.
Yeah, it's sort of a
religious
separate
arguments here.
conversation,
It's absolutely
theologically.
not. That's not a valid argument when we're talking about something that is really.
I think
separate
maybe
from
a
religion.
more interesting conversation might be the conversation around federalism and the role of the federal government in sort of legislating this morality. Because I and Turk take maybe the more controversial opinion that it's okay if certain communities institute rules as long as they're bounded by the Constitution and as long as they don't prevent people from leaving those states or those communities. It's okay for them to legislate morality within there and, live in accordance to
Like,
their own beliefs.
How do you feel then
agree with that.
about the elements of some of these laws that make extraterritoriality a part of it?
I think that's really bad. So, like, I know in Texas it's been discussed that, like, you create sort of punishments for people who try to leave the state. I think that's probably a pretty dangerous road, and would be good. It'd be like an appropriate place for the government to step in and say that no, you can't like bound people's movement. So yeah.
It's gonna hurt them politically anyway to be doing this. So.
But I think that the big thing that people need to understand, if you're like a woman or a man in a very liberal blue state, it can be hard to conceptualize like just how conservative everyone is in these towns. Like I grew up in rural America and I live in Texas now. And I know a lot of women who are very pro-life, right? So like when you go to these red states, you meet women who are making these arguments for pro-life and not for, pro-choice. And it's not this like great tyranny if like a very conservative state like Mississippi institutes restrictions on abortion.
Well, hang on, so
because-
you're just going to the tyranny of the majority then?
Well, I think
not-
that tyranny
You
is
get
still bounded
because
by
most
exit. So
people in Mississippi don't like abortion, then everyone's rights in Mississippi get stripped.
it's not just most people; it's the vast majority.
Doesn't
of
matter.
people.
It's also
It doesn't
very
matter.
Not a protected right.
I do think it matters because ultimately the extent to which tyranny can be applied by the state is bounded by people's right to exit the state. So like at the worst it could possibly be for like a liberal woman in Mississippi is that she ends up moving. That's the worst it can be.
What
for
about if
her.
a lot of people in Mississippi are very poor. What about if they can't afford to fucking move?
Or if
Yeah,
it's like
which
one of
is
those
true.
life-threatening
Like-
situations where she's got to get it like right now
And
and doesn't have time
Yeah,
to like
I mean, these things may
F-150 jet to
happen,
another state.
but I think
right?
it's like this is the inevitable consequence of like any law, right? Where sometimes you're going to have negative effects. And like I will also acknowledge, I think that instituting restrictions on abortions are going to have bad effects in red states. That's my guess, is that like sociologically, you're going to see a lot of crime. You're going to see a degradation of the society within these red states. And I think it's going to result in a lot of exodus. I think it's going to result in young women not coming to the state in the first place because they don't want to deal with that. And I think these are all like bad consequences, which might even push me out of the state. But I think that if states and communities want to accept these bad results in, purpose of serving this specific moral goal, I think that that's like the beauty of federalism, is that you can do that. You can suffer the consequences. Your state can decline in popularity, and you take that on the chin. And
no, but you're asking some of the most vulnerable people in America to take it on the chin for your philosophical approach to government.
A lot of these people are very pro. Pro.
Yeah, but lots of them aren't. Lots of them aren't as well. It doesn't matter that the majority want to strip the rights away from the minority.
I don't think that like we can legislate based on what you believe like minority is the just moral action, because anyone can make that argument.
Well,
like,
I think bodily autonomy is quite important, actually.
I know, but conservatives will make the same argument. Well, they'll say that like even if liberals had a majority, they still believe that things should be pro-life, right? They'll make the exact same argument.
Okay, well, look, if they don't want to get an abortion, don't. Fine. I've got no problem. I'm not trying to impose any shit on them. They're the ones trying to impose shit on everyone else.
I think you're missing like the point of their argument.
A right to choose means that you have a choice, that you have a choice to drink, that you have a choice to get an abortion.
But you don't have the choice to murder someone else. So that's the problem with their reasoning, is that like you don't have an infinite right to bodily autonomy. Your right to bodily autonomy is bounded by the effects of what that autonomy results in. So that's the conservative argument. And it really fundamentally, it is just like a values difference here.
And other than the instances of rape and incest, usually women have the right to choose who they have intercourse with, and that's a very important thing that most women should take into account, knowing the consequences of that action.
I think women and men in general should be aware of the consequences.
Both sides are equally accountable.
A lot of people who are pro-choice are also big advocates for abortion being like your plan C, essentially. Not a lot of people who do advocate for the right to abortion are looking at it like that's the first option to controlling reproducing, right? Like people are going to use contraceptive of some sort most often. That's not always 100% safe. There can be accidents. There are emergency contraceptives afterwards, literally plan B and the like. And then an abortion would be after you've kind of exhausted those options.
Well,
so
two things.
Responsibility.
Wait, one second. I want to make sure Johnny Scarlett gets to talk, because Johnny Scarlett was trying to say something earlier.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Have we talked yet about what the actual dissent from the court said about this being a right? Because everything that I read in the dissent said that it's not a right essentially not because of the privacy thing, although the privacy, it sort of teeters on an edge, I would say, but it also involves something that's historical to the country, historical to the values or the overall just culture of our country. And so has anyone talked yet about possible, as I think it was True Mama was saying, about taking different directions into a new alternative to Roe v. Wade, wherein we would decide this based on a historical ability to have abortions in this country that has been taken away and given back at certain points, and how that's affected us historically.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about that for sure. Like, when you read, when I read Alito's opinion, a month ago, and how it's been worked into the majority of the opinion of the court, one of the arguments that he makes is that access to abortion, universal access to abortion as a right, is not something that's rooted in our common law tradition and history. And
that is true, but the actual act of abortion has been historical to every culture, frankly, since Egypt. So that's part of where it went wrong, I think, is where in Roe v. Wade, they actually had historical accounts, but they were historical accounts from different countries altogether. And so I think now at this point in our country's history, we probably have the ability to collect better data on our actual historical situation in America.
It's
Well,
totally
and our history
true
is, like,
that
not
lots
the
of
best.
people engaged in abortion, but like in regards to the legality of it, they're looking at whether or not the laws, criminalize it or not.
Taft, can you? I'm not saying you're being disingenuous, but I think a lot of conservatives are when they pretend that these 6 theocratic lunatics actually looked at the law and decided in a completely dispassionate fashion that this was an end of a decades-long conservative campaign to get the
Ruth Bader
end that they
Ginsburg
wanted.
said it was bad law.
And
So it's not just these
That's
people.
literally what Ruth. She's been saying that since the late 90s or something.
This is like an opinion that's not just held by like very conservative people.
Like, where were you?
And one of the opinions of Roe versus Wade is the fact that it's not actually a law. It's a precedent that protected certain outcomes that happened from different types of cases.
Yeah, so there's a lot of problems legally with Roe v. Wade. I don't know if we want to get into that because we can definitely.
Yeah, but it's based on the religious beliefs of 6 people, basically.
Okay,
that's what's happened here.
It
is precisely that.
You should read.
It is precisely that.
Based on the
conservative No, I read the opinion. I'm saying they're lying.
You just believe that, like,
I'm saying they're lying. I'm saying they've come up with a reason, an excuse to try and get
You're
around
just mind
it.
reading. You're like, I know.
No, they've been doing it for decades. They've been trying to do this for decades and
Kavanaugh's
decades.
been doing this for decades.
Okay. Wait.
That's what you do. That other
Wait, I just want to.
Barrett's been doing this for decades.
No, the people who got them appointed have been doing it for decades.
Kevin.
You'd stop talking. You weren't talking.
I stopped talking. You gotta give me a second, Kevin. Jeez.
I want sports still.
I want one person talking at a time. We had like 4 people yelling over each other there. So this is what I'm gonna do because I don't think chat really heard what you guys were trying to say. I want Kevin to say his position, right? And then we're gonna have one person respond to what Kevin's position was. Okay? And Counter, I saw you. I'm gonna write your name down.
Thanks.
Yeah, they've spent decades, and again, not the individual justices, obviously. Many of them weren't even, they were children at the time that this sort of thing would have started. The religious right in America, through its legal entities, have been trying to get justices appointed who will eventually take this decision down. They've been trying for 50 years. They finally succeeded, and I suppose in a very Machiavellian sense, congratulations, you evil bastards. But this is what they've been trying to do. This is not based on law. They decided they didn't like it, and they were going to get rid of it by hook or by crook, including stealing Merrick Garland's seat.
So some people may have had that position. I'm not going to argue that there are like no conservatives in the country who were willing to do whatever is necessary to get rid of Roe. The argument that I'm making is that Roe v. Wade was bad law. It's bad constitutional law. It's based on a very tenuous extrapolation from the 14th Amendment, as well as an interpretation of common law and history that is not really rooted in the facts. And so if you look at the way that Roe v. Wade was written, it wasn't just conservatives who said it was bad law. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as we brought up, is one of these people who for decades criticized Roe v. Wade on the basis that it was bad law. So when we see the decision from the court and it's all of this legal arguments, those legal arguments are correct, right? So maybe they have like ulterior motives, right? Unfortunately, I'm not a mind reader, unlike Kevin. So I can't mind read the Supreme Court justices' actual views
and you have
what they're
no
intending.
semblance of intuition at all, no? You can't read into
I
people's
can
actions
take them at their
or
words, right?
No.
So their words say the legal
People are
argument,
incapable of lying.
and the legal
That's
argument is correct. But I can't tell that they're just lying, right? Because I'm not willing to read in my own political bias into that. I can only take things.
No,
at
you
face
are a
value.
completely dispassionate, non-biased individual. I absolutely
Exactly.
concur.
Thank you, Kevin. That's so true.
Longer when you do that? I'm curious.
What is that?
I was asking him if he thought it made his point stronger when he cut her off and was snarky and all that.
It's okay. I'm being snarky too. It's fun.
This is the Hippy Dippy.
You could convince somebody so much better if you would just like go with what she's saying and bounce off of it, but you're just unwilling to do that.
It's okay.
Okay.
There's 3 people talking at the same. There's 3 people that are waiting to talk.
Well,
I got you.
yeah.
No worries.
Let's go.
So
to
next, I want to go to. Well, there was Turk was waiting to talk. Counterpoints was waiting to talk. Then we can go to
Transphobia.
Malcolm.
Exactly.
Turk?
Counterpoints first. Counterpoints first.
Okay,
Thanks, buddy.
counterpoints first then.
Yeah, so I just want, even though it was like 15 minutes ago, I want to address it. So Malcolm doing the life starts at breath thing. You know, basically, I understand what you're doing logically, where it's like a shit post against religious people saying like, oh, you know, you don't even understand your own religious works as a result.
Oh, I'm
You know,
Catholic, just for clarification. I do know
well,
it. I practice
interesting.
it, so.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, that's actually super interesting. But
That's
life starts at breath. The reason, so I would say from a non-religious perspective, but somebody who's probably more centrist on this, is that's actually like a monstrous position. Like taking a viable fetus that's at like, you know, 22 weeks or 22 weeks after, it's perfectly healthy, mom's perfectly healthy, and then just saying, oh, you can abort just because life begins
how is she lying by
the
omission?
first breath.
What's
that like
the
I
omission?
hope it's a shit post because basically that position to me is monstrous. Okay, well you can explain it in a second. Then
Agreed.
the other point is, from my perspective, after like 18 to 22 weeks when the central nervous system pops in, that's where I start to view that as, you know, basically no longer a proto-human, but actually like
Welcome
a
to the
human with some
Kevolution.
level of sentience. And so the argument that was made was, well, pro-choice, you know, it's your choice, just choose not to do it. Well, that's not good enough for me, because we don't make that kind of exception for any other form of homicide. We don't say like murder is statistically rare, therefore if you don't want to murder people, just don't murder people. That's obviously not the kind of like moral you know, injunction that we put up against our society. Finally, addressing Mr. Kevin, because I want to give everybody something to deal with. Decades long ambition from conservatives. You're absolutely right. It was a decades long ambition from conservatives, but that's because in the 1970s there was legislation from the bench basically where Roe v. Wade inferred a bunch of rights from privacy and then extrapolated out onto the general population. And conservatives at the time basically took that on the chin. They said, fuck me. This has nothing to do with our Constitution. This has nothing to do with anything that's passed through the legislature. This has nothing to do that's been passed through the House or through the Senate. But basically, we have to deal with the law of the land as it presently exists, and we have to mount a decades-long campaign to reverse this. So they did, and they succeeded. And I appreciate you congratulating the Machiavellian evil motherfuckers who finally repealed this shit. But one of the questions that I got from chat is, does anybody have, like, there's all these moral arguments for why abortion should be legal. Is there any legal arguments for why abortion should be legal in the United States? And following that, do you see a path going forward? And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I would suggest that the legal one would be that they're not actually people. So it's not homicide. That they're not. They don't have sapiens. They're not. They don't have personhood.
After 22 weeks with a
well, after 22 weeks, okay, that's
fucking position.
Well, regardless of where you want to set the line, we can argue about this many weeks or that many weeks. Until that point is reached, they're not personhood, so it's not. They're not. It can't be homicide because they're not.
I mean, in my
human.
opinion, even if they are persons.
Wait. I wanna throw it over to since we're on this line of questioning. I want to make sure Turk eventually gets to talk, but I want to make sure Malcolm seems to want to respond to that. So I'll throw it over to Malcolm.
Well, so as far as like late-term abortion goes, I just wish that we could kind of abandon this idea that there's some random woman out there that's getting cream pied like 5 days a week and is like, oh my god, I can't wait to go to the abortion clinic and get another one. Like, LOL. Like the late-term pregnancy or the late-term abortions that are done are usually like
cream
literally
pie.
life-saving, or the fact that somebody had like a stillborn or a miscarriage that isn't releasing. Maybe there's like one out of like 1 million people that's like, oh my god, I can't wait to go and get my abortion every Friday. Girls' night, let's go. I wish that we could dispel that. And the idea that this is like a consequence of, like, I think it was Madam that brought it up, and this is just kind of piggybacking off of that, that this is like some kind of consequence for like having sex. Like you have sex and you get pregnant, and the consequence of that is like, in return, giving birth to a human being that you have to like fester in your body for 9 months and then emotionally, financially, like whatever, support it for 18 years. This is like a consequence or a punishment that we wouldn't accept for literally anything else. So in response to the question of like, what is the legality metric for this? I would say it's like self-defense. If somebody's like encroaching on like your personhood and your autonomy, even in the case where it's not life-saving, where this is like a commitment that is for life, if you are unable to or unwilling to care for this life, it's better for the life that will potentially happen. And it's also like your right to defend yourself against that kind of stuff as well, especially if we're talking about like a hostile pregnancy or like an ectopic pregnancy or a miscarriage that like won't release. Like all of these things will feed into that idea that this is like a defensive case of action against like this hostile thing that's attacking your body from the inside.
But you just blended like two concepts. Like, so, and how does the Catholic Church? So, for instance, you said like, let's dispel with this myth. Number one, seeing them all on Twitter. So there's at least 3
I
of
know.
them. Okay,
that's where I get on.
Then, yeah, that's where I do too. Anyways, but the point being that you did just blend in, even if it's voluntary, as if we weren't going to catch that. If we were talking about ectopic, guess what? Well, I'll explain. So in the 13 states, like even the most like strict states or whatever, there's all of them have caveats for health of the mother. every single one of them. I checked out every single one of them. They all have exceptions for health of the mother. So that doesn't eliminate that, because there's still people figuring out the law. Allegedly, there was a doctor on the phone for 20 hours because he didn't know if he was going to be liable for handling an ectopic pregnancy. We haven't settled this, but allegedly that's on the books. Then, when it comes to what I'm talking about is viable fetuses with self-defense. How the fuck does the Catholic Church deal with your self-defense argument against a viable fetus of fucking 20 weeks? Because that doesn't seem very Catholic to me.
Well, because life doesn't begin until first breath. So
look, if we're talking self-defense,
I don't consider it a human.
That's a very stupid.
If we're talking
self-defense, until after birth.
If we're talking self-defense, Second Amendment, motherfuckers.
Okay.
That's fine. The Catholic Church also thinks that my kind are like unraveling society, like from the hinges. So
me,
yeah,
so we're traumatized for having a miscarriage at 3 months. It's like it wasn't even a baby. I'm just freaking out for nothing, right?
Okay.
Yeah, most women don't process it.
Like I named it. I wanted to keep it. It was 3 months. It wasn't a baby though, right?
No,
when I lost it, I was fucked up for years. That was just.
Of course.
Can I just point out?
That's definitely traumatic for sure, but that doesn't mean that it's like a viable life.
Is traumatic. Wow.
As to
good to know.
Okay. One second.
Yeah.
Kevin, you got to talk a little bit. Turk has been waiting very
patiently.
He hasn't talked yet.
I can. You know, I shave like shit off my feet. Like there's tons of clump of cells in my bath, and I wash it off, and I don't cry about it. You know, that's weird how that happened.
And that is really interesting.
Yeah, so a couple things. So to Kevin, going back into the is Roe good law or whatever, I've posted a video into the group chat. It's a TED Talk based on Catherine Colbert. She was one of the prosecutors or defendants. I don't know. I don't remember off the top. But they were one of the people that were part of the Roe discussion. And she even admits that it was on rocky ground and even came to the conclusion that it was going to get overturned because it was precedent. It wasn't based on any factual thing that was legislated by Congress or by the state legislature. So I hate that your opinion is just wrong. You're just going to have to eat it and take the L, my friend. And then going to Malcolm, I refer you back to your Catholic catechism, dude. Life begins at conception. If you don't agree with that, then you are not really a Catholic. You're just like a named Catholic.
I'm literally transgender, bro. Like the Catholic Church doesn't even accept my kind. Like there's caveats to this, right?
I'm like so confused.
I am Catholic. There's like caveats.
But do you like believe in Catholic?
Yes, holy tradition. Yes.
So you agree with the catechism?
Words don't have meaning for certain people.
So you
it's
agree
very
with the
true.
catechism?
It was just confusing, I think, because when you said you're a Catholic, I think people thought you had a certain set of beliefs.
He's not a Catholic.
I know it's crazy. It's like how people think that because I'm trans, I'm like a communist, but you know.
No, you don't agree with your own points of your own religion that's been agreed upon by your leaders of your religion. I'm sorry.
I know it's because I have eyes and a brain and I can read the Bible myself and make my own interpretations. You got me.
I could redirect us off of religion.
My life has been ruined.
If I could redirect us off of religion, I just am wondering what your thoughts are here. I have a question for my. Oh, yeah. I have a non-religion related question and/or comment here. Taking it back to more of a legal topic. What are your thoughts around if it was an overstep of the court, based on the fact that the original Dobbs Mississippi case was more looking to find clarification or ruling on where limits could be enforced and not attempting to overturn the whole thing? Like the more logical conclusion would have been to reevaluate where the limits can be in place instead of just like throwing both of them out completely.
I'd love to jump off of that really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd love to jump off of that really quick. Thank you so much. And go into a more legal based argument on this. One of the main issues is that yes, we've been talking for decades about how Roe v. Wade is precedent. It is not legislation that guarantees people's ability to not just abortion, but it's sort of a trickle down effect when you get into the bodily autonomy nature of not just abortion, but also Plan B, also regular contraception. That's and even the ability to have sex. Now, what I'd like to say on this is that we have a group of people in this country who say, oh, well, that's a slippery slope. It's going to lead to babies getting abortions or whatever. And my answer to that is, frankly, we already have tiered or scaling bodily autonomy based on our ages when it comes to things like the ability to have a medical procedure by ourselves, or even just the ability to do something like smoke or drink. So I think that that would be a good basis for a new type of legislation that allows for bodily autonomy as more of a right and less of a precedent.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to craft legislation, I do think it makes a lot of sense to enable women to have control over their own pregnancy. And it's very obvious, like it's very clear that so many sociological effects are tied in with this. So there's good reason to like allow women to control when they have children, because raising children in dangerous homes or homes where the women can't like totally provide for them or don't have a stable family home life has all of these negative effects growing up. And we really see that borne out in the data, especially with crime. So I think it does make sense for especially liberal states to really consider making sure that whatever right to abortion they have is really codified in law and is strong, so that it's not going to be overturned by the court or by, you know, federal legislation.
Can I just pipe in with a couple of bits? Firstly, as to Turk's video, you linked a TED Talk video. Okay, a person thinks a thing. You know, like lawyers disagree about stuff. I'm not sure how that classifies as an L, that you found someone who agrees with you. Well done.
No, it's just a lot of people believe this on all sides of the aisle.
The person that
and a lot of people don't think that as well.
No, you completely didn't hear what I said. The person that presented that TED Talk was one of the people that litigated the Roe versus Wade.
Well, there's no way I could have watched it. I'm literally live now with you. I don't know. How can I have watched it?
I know.
Well, he said that earlier.
And you discredited everything I said, saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter. Well, it's just a single person." No, if you
it's a single person. Yes.
That okay. Never mind.
Well, it was only
anyway,
6 people who
can
decided it. So.
Can I? Well, yeah. As to Connor's point about exceptions for the mother's health, I will point out that the law in Ireland, before they're currently changing it because of the repeal of the 9th Amendment thing, but they had exceptions for that as well, and several women were denied unrightly denied abortions and were essentially allowed to bleed out because of that. If you look at the case of Savita Halapanava, however the fuck you pronounce it, it was a particularly brutal case of that. So even with laws that technically allow for that kind of exception, they're often written in a way that basically doesn't allow for that exception.
And what's the point of having any laws?
Wait, quickly, I want to just say, Turk, you sure you don't want to respond to any of that, or?
No, I trust that Kevin will be good faith and actually watch the TED Talk, because it's a person that litigated the Roe versus Wade decision that agrees that the precedent wasn't going to be held fast forever. It was eventually going to fall apart, and it's up to the legislatures to actually go and codify it.
Well, I agree they should have codified it, definitely, yes.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone on this panel says that they shouldn't have codified it. The Roe versus Wade thing is just bad legal precedent and law.
Well, surely you don't want them to have codified it.
You don't want them to codify it, right?
If the I morally am against it, but if the group of people I live with in my community wanted to have certain things in place for certain things, and it goes through the legislative process, my voice can be heard. When it's being legislated from the bench, that's not good for the country.
I think that's respectable, because that's pretty much my position as well.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to shove my religion down people's throats. I know plenty of other conservatives would like to do that, but I am more respectful in that degree. And I like I said in my intro, y'all did hear the intro, yeah. I think there do need to be carve-outs and exemptions for abortion, because there's certain instances where it is probably a good thing. As much as I hate to say it, there are probably instances for that.
And almost everyone agrees on that. When you look at the statistics.
Most conservatives believe that abortion should be legal, but there should be restrictions on that.
Legal, safe, and rare, right?
There's a phrase that we've been using on my stream for the past few weeks while we've been talking about it, and it's in response to something like morality is subjective, or the morality on abortion is subjective. And I'd like to say that it is objective. There is a clump of cells, a life, however you would like to label it, that's being snuffed out. However, it's medically individualized objectivity. It is something that needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis with medical information in tow by a professional to make sure that what y'all are talking about, the ability for people to get this when they really need it, not just when they want it, is guaranteed.
And
yeah, I want to give a concession to Kevin. So allegedly in Texas within the past week, when the law passed, there was I'm not saying that this was on Twitter because I get all my news from Twitter, right? But there was a story of a doctor who basically there was a lady with an ectopic or some kind of rupture, and they were calling the lawyers allegedly for like half a dozen hours before they put the woman into surgery because they were so afraid that they were gonna like fuck up the liability and then be able to be sued for committing a homicide and maybe go to jail and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So there's a woman who's bleeding in the fucking ER room waiting to be seen who possibly could die from a rupture, and you got the doctor basically figuring out liability on the back end.
That's what happened in Ireland. They could have saved her and they just had to let her bleed out and die in front of them.
And there's also examples of this, like the doctors and nurses are speaking out about.
Well, and there's also conscientious objectors as well, where like Catholic hospitals, for instance, I believe there was like some example in like Maryland or some shit. Literally, they like turned away a patient due to like a religious objection, where they said like we can't perform it. Like
also,
go to another hospital.
I'm old enough to remember.
The woman's bleeding.
I'm old enough to remember the fucking Republican scare about death panels at the time of the Obamacare thing, and now all of a sudden they're like, actually no, we should have death panels where we decide the fate of a woman who's bleeding to death on a table. Like, it's evil. It's fucking evil. Let the doctors save the person's fucking life. Jesus.
The doctors wanted to. It's unfortunate the legal system prevented it.
Well, exactly. Yeah, the legal system needs to get the fuck out of the way. Like, just
and I think that's
let
part
the
of the
doctor do
problem
their
too.
work.
I think that's part of the problem too, is that everybody agrees that like at the very like bare minimum, like bottom bar, that like rape, incest, like if you're gonna die, in those circumstances, like you should just be allowed to do it. But the problem is that a lot of this legislation doesn't make exceptions for these kind of things, or even like we were talking about a little.
There are some examples where there are not.
Only one, as far as I'm aware.
Well, like we were talking about earlier too, with the idea that like even if that was happening, they can't leave the state either, right? So if you were like on the border of like Texas and I don't know. Whatever state's like liberal right there, if you're gonna fucking die and skipping across the border or whatever, you can still get in trouble for that kind of shit. So like I think that bare minimum, like we all agree that there should be like these exceptions, like very bottom of the barrel, but the reality is that a lot of these don't have that exception in there where it's just across the board blanket, like we're just not gonna do it at all, and that's the problem, right?
I think that's only true for one state that is that strict, and all of the states
as of
have
now,
exceptions.
yeah. Well, Missouri has the same one where if you
3 to 5 that are considering it. I'm trying to pull it up right now, but there is only a few states that are looking at
but that's
that.
still like people dying, right? Yeah,
millions of people, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, again, like everyone on this panel would not like support abortion restrictions that restrict it in the case of rape, incest, or medical necessity. So
yeah, but the people on this
I think
panel
we
aren't
could all
creating
say
law.
that like.
I agree.
Sorry,
Yeah, actually, could I be the centrist or whatever? We're dealing with like the outcome of our worldview, which is basically like they're not as nuanced or centroid as we are, where they're just like, I'm pretty sure out of the 13 states that passed the like no abortion law, only one of them has rape and incest as an exception, and all the other ones are health of the mother. So
and then Missouri is doing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gunnar.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I don't think I mean, I want to hear what you're going to say, but I don't think anybody's passed the cross-border laws yet.
I think Texas has. I'm not 100% confident, but I know that Missouri has a bill up that's like more than likely going to pass that like if the baby was like conceived in Missouri, that you still can't get an out-of-state abortion because it was conceived in Missouri. That was one that was just proposed, and it's looking like it's pretty spicy.
Well,
and it looks like it's probably going to pass.
That's incredible. So then you've got it depends where you spunk as to what the legality of the situation is. That's fucking embarrassing. Can that be
California?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Louisiana is currently dealing with the fact that a judge has blocked. So Louisiana is one of the states that had laws that automatically, as soon as Roe v. Wade was overturned, they went into effect. I think it's both of the abortion clinics in Louisiana have been closed as of right now. And there is one judge who has held out and said that we cannot stop selling Plan B yet. However, that is also expected to be overturned. So Plan B may actually be off the shelves in Louisiana very soon. So I think that there's probably a lot in a lot of different states that's sort of in the ticks of the legal system, and it's not quite sure if they're going to actually go through yet.
I think
people
Yeah.
about like
Sorry, go ahead.
contraception, types of contraceptive like Plan B, or even like an IUD, which is going to prevent implantation but still allow for fertilization. And by these definitions, those types of birth control or emergency contraceptive would not be allowable, which is really just making the need for abortion even greater, because we're not able to work to prevent us from getting to that point.
And this is actually the point of it being, I think we're going to see with the challenges to other court cases with the rights to single people being able to get contraception, for instance, which is one of the cases that Thomas mentioned. This is why I think the pro-life people, the hardcore pro-life people, we need to start calling them forced birth people, because that's what they are. That's their actual fucking position. Oh. If you can't get contraception, which is the thing they're pushing for, and you can't get an abortion, then you're basically, if you ever have sex, you're going to have a kid. That's their position.
It's by choice, because they don't like the choice of having contraceptive actions. Yeah. They don't like the choice of sex ed being taught in schools for people to understand the way that their bodies work. And then they don't like choices being available after a pregnancy has occurred.
And this is from the small government people as well. Small government,
Yeah, so the way that you guys are kind of rolling a grenade into the rightoid camp, and we're going to have to reconcile with these people, I want to throw a grenade into the leftoid camp and just say, at some point, is this not like the shittiness of democracy? So what I mean by that is, like, I'm a Republican, meaning that I think that you should basically enshrine your fundamental rights into law, and then maybe we should touch up on things every now and then. But this is like, unfortunately, the popularity contest has not gone your way in 13 fucking states, and now there are like horrific consequences, but this is the rule of the majority within these localities.
Can I just point out that the
position of these people,
the Democratic candidate has won in 13 of the last 15 presidential elections, has won the majority.
Okay, but we're looking at.
So you're talking about a popularity contest. It's the fact that fucking North Dakota gets 2 senators, even though it's like 12 people there. It's ridiculous.
If you go to Missouri, people are conservative. I don't know if you've heard about this, but like these states in America are full of very conservative people and very conservative.
Yeah, not many of them. Not many people though. Why they get 2 senators is ridiculous. Yeah.
So, but they're not writing federal legislation. They're not legislating for the entire country. They're legislating for their own states, which is why we say the majority in these states is pro-life. That's why it's relevant, because they're not.
No, I'm making the argument.
Really quick. I want to touch on this. Because what we are looking at when we have federal versus state by state legislation on this is whether or not something is a human right, or whether or not it is a civil right, or whether or not something should be more regional and is not considered as core to human safety or our ability to succeed as a country. Okay, so is there anyone on the panel who has a problem with the original Roe v. Wade setting of this being a right to privacy?
I don't think
do we object to that? Yeah.
Is there anybody who says on this panel that this is not something that is a right to privacy, that having an abortion or being able to choose to have an abortion, etc.?
Yeah, I think there's a limit here, and the limit kind of boils down to the bodily autonomy argument. So, for instance, if you were going to say, like, I'm making a medical decision as an autonomous person about my health, and under these certain provisions, these gestational periods, I am a person who's making a decision about my own health. I think that's an argument that you can make that falls under the umbrella of privacy, probably 20 weeks and under. But after 20 weeks, with viability, there's a second, from my perspective, there's a second person there. So the self-defense argument no longer applies. The non-aggression principle does apply, and the state intervention does apply in order to intervene. And Kevin, I'm not a libertarian. I just know we have libertarians here. Okay,
I know, but anytime I hear non-aggression principle, I just hear about.
Does it hurt you physically?
It
hurts me physically.
It does, yeah. It's awful. Yeah.
And I think the other part of the argument there too is also that not the legislature setting those time limits, viability, feasibility, all that stuff. It was the Supreme Court setting those standards, and that's something that many conservatives don't like. Legislation from the bench.
It looks like a law, like how it's written.
Yeah, so that's one of the major issues with it, and that's why a majority of people still support abortion, but there should be restrictions on it.
I'll just echo what Connor is saying, or what Counterpoints is saying as well, with the regards to it stemming from privacy. I am pretty concurrent with what Alito said in that abortion is a special circumstance because it concerns something that is not present in other cases, other rulings that dealt with right to privacy, which is the presence of a potential person. And so the 14th Amendment, it does not mention the word privacy. That's not within the text. So you extrapolate that out from liberty. And I think that's probably a reasonable extrapolation. It also doesn't mention abortion, or that abortion is necessarily something that stems from right to privacy. So we're getting 2 layers of abstraction out from the actual text of the 14th Amendment. And that abstraction is problematic because it also concerns the morality of other people, of potential life. And so only Clarence Thomas, which is the most conservative justice, believes that we should reevaluate other Supreme Court rulings that stemmed from the right to privacy. And everyone else, including, Alito, disagrees presumably with that. So I think that that's probably legitimate, that greater position that these other cases are fundamentally different in that they don't concern potential life.
Taftage, I'm gonna hold you to that then. When they do start stripping those rights away, I will have to dunk on you and say I told you so.
I mean,
told me what? That it's. I don't think it legally makes sense. So like, if they do like strip away like further rights, I don't think there's a good legal argument for that. But I don't think they
particularly care about good legal arguments. They've got their.
Well,
yeah, we understand that.
I'd be interested to hear an argument against the potential, because I realize, like, in my brain it's kind of squishy. It's like, I know that potential life to me is not as important as the health or the life of whoever the fully formed mother is as a person.
Yeah,
but I don't necessarily have like a logical thing ready for that. Does anybody have that?
Well, for me it's sentience as well as like
abortions have nothing to do with that.
Wait, hold on.
Most abortions have nothing to do with protecting the life of the mother. I just love that we don't mention that at all throughout the whole thing. Like, most abortions are not to protect health. Like, it's a choice.
A lot of those choices are made because somebody might already have conditions where it's going to be very dangerous for them. I think health is certainly a factor in a lot of them. I know there's a statistic that flies around from the 90s that says 99% of abortions are convenience-based, but that statistic is looking at only women who were in an emergency situation and had to have an abortion to literally save their life right then. It's not really representative.
I think we have better stats than that, and we have way more precise stats than that, and I still think it's like
health.
It's pretty low. And what I'm saying is, like, we should change the conversations from all these things, which seem kind of disingenuous, and maybe go towards like how Johnny Scarlett says, kind of a tiered system of morality. So like, if you're stop taking it to the government and we should do it between us and really do care about the life and say it is a life, but your life is more important, and put it in a tier system. If you're a 16-year-old being pregnant, you're not going to be treated the same. You're going to be helped and all of that. But I think we should bring in more to that so we can actually give the
who
care
wants to do
to people. People,
who wants to do a stream, guys,
illegal,
of
people are
morality tier list
in garages, like my mom
morality
tier
list
when she was 16.
Okay,
and I don't think we want to be like the communists over here.
Think about what you just said, and then think about what you said before.
Fascism
about
is
health,
in the F
how
list,
supposedly
definitely.
Abortions a lot of the times aren't for health, but define health, babe. Your mother's future and her mental health as a 16-year-old is part of her health.
Well, and the health of the fetus after. The health of the fetus after, like if you live in like a shack or whatever.
Great. That baby would have been fine. She would have done fine, okay? What I'm saying here, the commies took care of the babies in the farms if they had farms and moms, and that wasn't the problem. It's the orphan babies that suffered. Anyways, my point is, like, if we want to have these conversations, we got to be honest about what's going on. The girl, she's going to suffer after the abortion. It's not like, haha, I shouldn't take this seriously, and then have an abortion and there's no problem there. Like, we need to, like, words matter. We need to be honest with what's happening and what we're doing, and that way people are going to be more careful, and we are going to help the ones to which it happens. It's not going to be like, people aren't going to see it as like a candy you take. Like, sorry to tell you, but like, an abortion pill is traumatizing to take. It's traumatizing.
Okay, Turk and counter.
Yeah, just a quick point to Kevin. So I know you're worried about the erosion of all of our, constitutional rights and stuff, but we've already heard from the President Biden himself that no constitutional right is absolute. So you've they've already told us what the game plan is, and that's from the Democrats themselves. So you just need to be aware that
fuck Joe Biden.
You're going to lose your rights regardless. The Second Amendment is constantly under attack. I'm really, well, yeah, of course, because you're in a bad place, man. But like the First Amendment is being eroded in certain instances, and others are as well. So it's like, that's why conservatives are here, in order to prevent those erosions and in order to get back to
different erosions instead.
Well, abortion's not a constitutional right. Sorry.
Well, it was up until last week.
No, it was protected by a court precedent.
Well, okay, but they're the final arbiter. Right. It's not in the Constitution. There's loads of things that aren't in the Constitution.
It was an allowable thing in this country. Yeah. It was an allowable thing in this country based on the decision that it fell under.
There was a constitutional
right. And since it wasn't actually legal or a constitutional right, it could be just swept away due to interpretations of a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, but that's what the Supreme Court does. It's overturned precedent
I don't want to be
like too
pedantic on this, but it was a right.
I do want to be pedantic. So no, this is the same thing with like the executive actions under Obama, that all the conservatives were like, hey, you're doing executive actions, like next Republican, he's gonna be able to fuck all this shit up, and they were like, nope. So they just passed that shit. What happened as soon as fucking Trump came into office? He fucked it all up. So no, you can build fucking shaky ground if you want, but when the next fucking kid walks over and kicks your sandcastle in, like, no, you didn't build the shit correctly. And then I wanted to address Johnny Scarlett. Johnny Scarlett was asking whether or not there's any like objective or non-emotional argument for the protection of proto-life, like basically life before 18 weeks or 20 weeks. I don't have an argument. It's raw instinct. It's emotion.
Proto-life.
Like I don't have an objective measure for you. All I can tell you is that when I was having my son, we were in like a high-risk environment or whatever, so we went to go see the OB early. We see, strong-ass heartbeat on the cardiogram. At that point, he's basically just a heart and a clump of cells around him. But I didn't see a heartbeat. I saw my son. And I saw the potentiality of what he would become and who he is, and he's going to be a reflection of his mother, and he's going to be a reflection of me. And that
law should be made upon what Connor thinks.
Has nothing to do with like statistics or objectivity or anything like that. But I do think it taps into that caveman brain of protecting.
We should all just make laws based on what Connor feels.
I'm just saying that I don't think you're going to find an objective, rational justification here. It's all going to be emotional and subjective.
Too, and to be honest, I think that that's more of an argument for us to really observe this on a level of legally allowing people to do or not do an activity that could save their lives. And for me, evolution is the ability to look, to observe your most base instincts and say, I'm going to use that, or I'm not going to use that, or I'm going to change it. It's why humans and dolphins evolved to have sex for pleasure instead of procreation,
Hang on, humans and dolphins don't have sex. Huh?
We're allowed.
Well, not with each
We're
other.
allowed to look at the fact that maybe some of us are having this really emotional reaction to the ability of other people to choose to have an abortion, and these people on this side are saying, I am so emotionally torn and not okay with you doing this. And so me again, like having a society, we have to look at that, and we have to say, okay, maybe that's not necessary for how we should let other people do things.
I think a lot of conservatives like flossing on the grave of like Roe versus Wade is that emotional instinctive objection where like a lot of people were super casual about sex, super casual about abortion, super casual about basically Plan B, super casual about all this kind of shit, and the conservatives are like screaming from the hills, no, you're dealing with like proto-life. We have this like instinctive subjective feeling that this is something that's very important and sacred to us, and you're basically stomping all over it. So then now that they were able to overturn Roe versus Wade, they're celebrating. And so I think that's like
it's not just that. I think certainly since the age of Trump, literally owning the libs, it doesn't matter. They would destroy the world to own the libs. So the fact that they've got a W they can dunk on people with, that's it. The point is, if liberals are angry, upset, and hurt, they will celebrate, and they don't care what the reason is for it.
I wish I could disagree with you, but I can't.
want to
They're
comment
not
on the
mustache twirling villains. They genuinely believe that they're sticking up for the rights of the unborn. Like, if you talk to these people, they'll say things that like this decision and this fight is purely altruistic, and they're fighting for the rights of people who can't speak up for themselves. So like they believe these things like very deeply and genuinely. It's not just
Both
to
things
own the
can be
libs.
true.
Yeah, I
There's
was about to say,
also
can we get a
mustache twirling
hashtag
villains
not
for
all?
sure.
Can we get a
There's a
hashtag
couple of
not
them.
all? Because like
just-
they're
I think the majority of
Some of them are fucking
consumers
assholes.
genuinely believe it. Like they take pleasure,
Sure.
or I'm sure a lot of
Yeah,
them take
At least 10
pleasure.
of them.
But like the fundamental reasoning is not just to own the libs. Like that's not why they're doing it at core.
I didn't
'Cause
say
there's lots of
fundamentally.
Okay,
Like,
as
there are
long
other
as we
reasons as well.
acknowledge that
Also,
like,
they'd be more interesting if they were mustache twirling villains.
Well, and you can have good intentions but still have like negative consequences. Like if they really cared about like the outcomes of these kind of things, why don't they support like social programs for like early parents, right? Like you have a kid, like you get X amount of time off of work or whatever, it's paid, like childcare is more accessible, like easier to afford. Like having a kid's fucking expensive and it like slams your entire life to a screeching halt. Like instead of trying instead of trying to like ban abortion, why don't they like spend all their time trying to like facilitate better lives for like kids who are born and
Their
are
argument,
wanted?
like,
There's a lot of them
only
that
because
works if you
wanna
Reaganism
speak
and
on
its
real quick
consequences
something.
have been a disaster for the human race.
But they do it more on a community basis, like small
Be right
community
back.
instead of wide. At least
It's
that's what
been
they-
brought up. True Mama brought this up, and maybe someone else. I'm not 100% sure about the idea that people are using abortions casually, right? Like it's just like I'm gonna pop in and get an abortion type thing, because I just do that, bi-monthly or whatever, and that's just
Same.
fundamentally wrong. Like that's
Yeah,
not
I've never
all
seen
of
it
the
happen.
statistics prove.
I'm
Like,
not a
there's
woman.
this-
I don't have women
yeah,
friends. You're right.
like that's this myth that is just perpetuated.
You just ignore my existence. You just brushed off my whole existence with your hand waved it.
Most
You
women
know, my
who
first fucking
6 out of
friend was a
10
teenager that had an abortion. I held her hand while she got the fetus stuck out, and then she wanted to have a baby, but just with another guy. So she went and had sex the same week as she had the fucking abortion. My
There's
fucking friend.
obviously like
She was my
exceptions
best
and
friend.
outliers. There's
No,
obviously
but you're
exceptions and
acting like
outliers.
these don't exist, but this was a
I'm telling
formative
you, those are
experience
the
that I went through
exceptions and
that you just
outliers,
brushed off.
and
Like,
more
I'm
than half,
so
greater
tired of
than
people pretending like
50%.
these things aren't happening.
Greater
Wait, one
than
second. Wait.
50% of abortion.
Wait. Give me a second. I can't hear either of what you guys are saying because you're talking over each other. So I'm gonna have
I'm just saying.
I'm gonna have Madam go, and then I'll bring it back to Tro. Okay.
Can I just say,
Just
True had a
time.
go at me for interrupting earlier. I just want to point that out. Just.
Okay.
So
Just saying.
again, I
I've never been
acknowledge.
triggered by that she's
Stop.
devaluing my existence. I'm triggered.
Well,
I was
you let her
just
finish.
saying-
Well, you can.
You
well,
want to
you
wait
can-
your turn because it's my turn right now.
No, I was just saying that to Kevin before you started.
Okay.
again.
Okay.
Sorry.
Please. Okay. Nobody else talks. Madam.
It's a misconception that these exceptions, these rare examples that you're looking at, are the majority. 6 out of 10 people who get abortions already have children, so it's something that they're looking at
I had
not
to throw
only as a
that one in
decision
there.
that's going to impact their
I'm
own
not
life,
letting her
but their
fucking call me
existing
out like a
family
dickhead.
already. And
Fuck
greater
that
than
noise.
50% of people
Everyone
who seek out an
interrupts.
abortion have
It's
not
how
had
these
one
fucking
previously.
conversations
So
go.
while I'm not denying that those situations do occur and that they happen, they're not what's happening most of the time. They're exceptions.
Thanks for correcting what you're
Exception.
saying.
Which situation is the exception? I'm sorry, I was unclear.
Like the
people
girl
who
who
are
likes to
getting
get cream
abortions
pie
not
like
just
every
for
day.
fun. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
We've
Yeah,
got a
like I
second
got
cream
pregnant
pie
to
in.
that twice, and I had 2 miscarriages, and that's why I didn't have to have an abortion. So maybe I was being careless, and no one else that I know was being careless. Oh wait, never mind. The people around me were careless, and they had to have an abortion. I had to hold their hands, and then they went to do it again the same week. When
Yeah,
we had like free birth control available to us.
Genevieve, I'm really glad.
But you're right. This doesn't happen.
Yeah, Genevieve.
Maybe you're
She said
more.
that it does happen.
Okay.
Everybody said that it
Okay.
does.
Okay.
Sorry, I feel like
I'm not going to
Okay,
repeat
stop.
myself
Please.
over and over again if you're not going to
We're-
listen to the point
No,
that I'm
I
actually
agree.
making.
Please
I've already
stop.
said it multiple
Please,
times.
God,
so.
okay.
corrected what you're saying. Well,
Can you stop interrupting Dylan, please?
We're gonna go now over to Turk. I'm gonna have Turk speak. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Genevieve, I'm glad you actually brought up the statistics because I've been doing a lot of the statistics looking at, and you are correct that, most of these abortions happen for people that have
I
done
am
it
an
0
asshole.
times, and the rest
And I
are
make
more
zero
than one.
apologies for
But
it.
if you look at it from the other perspective as well, other than the instances of incest and rape, which are like 1 to maybe 5% of cases, most, or health of the mother, most abortions are elective, and it's like people keep celebrating both ends of the spectrum. I really wish we would all be consistent in our takes and not trying to emotionalize, the far left or the far side of a topic in order to justify something that's not bound by data.
No, what I would like to ask you the same question that I asked True earlier. You're saying elective, and I think the phrasing that was brought up earlier was most abortions are not for health, not for the health of the mother. Now, I think we're using health in this really either specific or vague way, and nobody's really talking about the emotional health of someone who's forced to have a child they don't want, the emotional health of a person who has to go through an adoption process for a child that they may have wanted if they were older or if they had better financial support. Are you disincluding, when you say that elective abortions are being emotionalized, are you denying that emotional health and financial health are very important to families?
They're talking about physical health.
Financial health is directly correlated to physical health.
Yeah, I know, but like when the laws are written, they're talking about like life of the mother being threatened by some factor in the pregnancy where having the child or carrying the child to term is a direct threat to her life. So like,
okay, yeah,
that's what they're talking about.
I can answer this directly.
I know legally, yes. I'm more so talking about him. Yes, your opinion.
No. My opinion's not an opinion here. So the sensationalization of these atopic pregnancies, sorry if I'm saying the wrong term, or rape and incest are a statistically small amount of abortion cases.
Ectopic.
Thank you. And the other end, go into true mama, people that get multiple abortions because it's fun and they pop the pills like candy. That's the other end of the spectrum. That's also a very rare occurrence. I wish that both sides would stop being sensationalized in order to push an agenda. To answer your question directly, sorry, Connor, Florida sucks, but the only data I've looked at is from a Florida 2020 I don't know if it was a poll or if it was just, polling people as they walked out of the clinic, but 75% of the people that went into the abortion or came out went in for no reason. 20% came for social or economic reasons, and then the rest of that was for some sort of physical or mental health.
Why do they need a reason?
Said they don't have a reason.
I think that can be a really unreliable way to draw conclusions.
Another thing that's really important with the idea of elective procedures too is that like it can be elective, but we can say that like cancer treatment is elective, right? Like you're electing to get the procedure done. So if you're just saying like it's elective, it doesn't really mean much of anything. If they're like, yeah, I just got like cream pied and I'm ready to get my third abortion this week, like obviously that's going to be recorded a little bit differently than just saying it's elective.
Well, can I just ask what? Yeah, go on. Sorry, Johnny, go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Real quick, medically, it's also classified as elective to do something like, I'm at really high risk for melanoma, so I occasionally electively get small spots on my skin removed. Now, it's not necessarily because they are causing me any harm other than they're annoying and I occasionally scrape them on things, but it's medically classified as elective. I don't want to scrape my arm constantly on something that's unnecessary. I don't want to, on a more serious tier of this, I don't want to, as a young person, have a child that I can't properly take care of. However, it's also culturally acceptable to have elective sex. Elective is probably not the word I should use. To have casual sex or to have sex with people that you love that you're not married to. So at some point, I think there's this idea that we should just have abortions be something that are separate from these other ideas like casual sex, and they're not. If we're going to societally allow this, we have to also have protections in place so that people can electively get medical procedures done that save their lives eventually.
Well, ideally all sex should be elective, really, when you think about it. But
scheduled in advance. Amen.
But
scheduled in advance. Let's go.
Yeah. As to a point Turk was making there, I don't know about the reliability of the numbers he cites, but I also sort of don't care. Why does someone have to have a specific reason? It's their choice. It's their body. It's their medical care. Why the fuck should you have any insight into that?
And frequently you might have like multiple reasons that are factoring in, and it's not really something that you can just tell somebody who's taking a survey. I mean, maybe you figured your own health and the effects on that. Maybe you've considered the fact that giving birth causes great bodily harm and that the maternal mortality rates in our country are absolutely horrendous compared to every other developed nation. Maybe you've got all of these different reasons in your mind, but then somebody just asks you and you're like, I don't know. Like,
So I appreciate all that feedback. At the beginning of saying that data source, I even took a stab at Connor because he lives in Florida, and we all know Florida's
right, yeah, I do
not a
recognize
great
you said
state.
that, so.
There's better conservative states, and I completely agree that I don't know what type this was, a survey or an elective poll. It's entirely possible that this data is skewed or they're missing data, going to what Scarlett said. So, but my point is that both sides of the argument are trying to polarize statistically small things in order to get a rise and to polarize their particular types. Whereas there's other statistics that I can show and represent that would actually help guide a more centrist approach and something that would probably be considered a compromise amongst both crowds.
You have your hand up. Do you want to go?
Yeah, True Mama, if you want to go, but I want to go too.
I'll go quick. I just don't want to be mischaracterized as saying that I'm saying people pop them like pills. I just want to change the language so we put some kind of weight to having the procedure, but keeping it legal, as like I was saying, kind of like Johnny was talking about. So we can move this energy
This
that
is
we're
radical
all having
centrism.
butting heads into helping women and families
Radical
in general
centrism.
having healthy pregnancies that go to term and they have happy, healthy outcomes afterwards. Like, if we would just take all this energy and like agree to like some kind of like, yeah, morally it's actually bad, but like let's allow it for this and that, so we can take this energy and make people's lives better, is kind of what I'm going for. But I'm sorry if that makes people angry to the point of mischaracterizing my points to make me look like a twirling mustache villain or something. Like, well, I'm just really big pragmatic centrist. I'm in Canada. No party that I ever voted for was against fucking abortion. Like, it's not a thing for me. I don't know why I'm treated like I'm pro abortion bans and stuff like that. I'm probably better at convincing right-wingers by talking about the communists doing that, like, to not be like the same way as them. So I don't know why you're attacking me, but if you can't convince me to be on your side, I don't know how you're gonna convince people who are actually like anti-abortion. Like, damn, you sound like really fucking rough when you're like accusing people like me of doing these things. Is all I'm gonna say.
Well, okay, and then I wanted to piggyback on the conservative appeal to hypocrisy that what happened earlier, which I'm actually perfectly okay with. Redistributive economics is poisonous with boomer conservatives because of Reaganism. They basically said that any kind of economic intervention and redistributive economics is evil. I think that's evil. So basically, if you want to help me hold right-wingers to account, that if you want children to grow up in your society, you have to make sure that they're happy and healthy, then yeah, let's fucking do it.
Based. Fucking based. Love it.
Based and true. We solved abortion. We did it, you guys.
Yeah.
We kind of did.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of something that Johnny Scarlett was talking about, because you're bringing up like the mental health and the financial health and all of these like other values that I think we all consider to be meaningful. And I don't know if I necessarily consider them like part of the health necessarily of the mother, but I do think they're important. And like, that's the reason why at the very start of this discussion, I said that if I was like king of a state and I were writing the laws, I would allow access to abortion, and I would allow access to contraception and all of these other ways to control when you have a baby. And it's because I'm like very aware of those other effects, financially and socially and mental health wise and so on. And I think those are important. And so I just want to like acknowledge that and say that I think that is something that like we often leave out of the conversation, is the general effect on society of having access to abortion and contraception, which we definitely know in the literature is something that's positive.
Sure, yeah, and I love that idea. Like, if I was king of a state, and to put it more into
Again, king.
if I was
Why
king of America or whatever, if we had to
both
go by
women have
American
gone
rules,
king.
there would be, I think,
Okay.
a baseline of bodily
Fuck it, I'll go with
autonomy
queen then.
and
Fuck
respect
yes.
for the body. The body is a temple in my ideal society. there's an idea that
My body's a temple.
There's an idea that children
Fucking
don't have bodily
massive.
autonomy, and I don't necessarily think that's true, or shouldn't be true. And so, yeah, my ideal society would have bodily autonomy and the right to safety, perhaps, or the right to reduce harm to oneself. I think that's probably how I would put it, as just something that is universally accepted.
Yeah, and like speaking morally, and I'll just finish this very quickly. Like, I'm probably one of these rare people that's willing to just like bite the bullet on the moral question and say, even if it is potential personhood or even is personhood, I think that killing is sometimes justifiable, morally speaking. And I think that abortion is one of these cases where killing is justified because of the sociological effects. And, frankly, you can also make these like these rights to self-defense arguments as well. But in general, I think that like we do consider killing to be morally justified sometimes, and we just got to look at the circumstance. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
and so I think this is one of those cases where it's like it's a non-sentient being, and if it's being aborted, we know that like the only people who are probably aware of it are not like depending on it. They're not emotionally like tied into it, and it doesn't have dependence. So like all of the sort of moral downstream effects of killing this.
I think Trump would have loved Ceausescu, yeah.
I think are
considering how Ceausescu dealt with the protests in Timișoara.
Just on top of like what Pat was saying a second ago, I think something that's important as well is like the outcome of the child. Like a lot of the conversation is centered around like the health of the mother and like what are the outcomes of having pregnancy, like carrying a pregnancy to term, like with high rates of mortality, like giving birth and stuff like that. But when we're looking at like the outcome of kids, I personally have known a lot of people like this, and I know in general, if you are unable to like care for like a child, versus putting them in like the foster care system, which has its own its own plethora of issues. I think it's important to consider that as well when we're weighing these kind of options. Like if you are a single mom, you work like 3 jobs, and you fucked up your birth control like one time and you got knocked up, and it's like, damn, like am I going to be able to give this kid the life that it deserves? I think that that's something that is important to factor in as well when we're talking about like the viability options, as far as like the health of the mother, but also like the health of like the future child. Like if that makes sense. I just kind of wanted to tag onto that.
So many downstream effects on their mental health.
Sorry,
yeah.
I wanted to yell at you, but now I want to.
Okay.
I want to yell at Malcolm.
Yeah, let's yell at
you. Everybody yell. Do it.
Yelling
the fucking, oh my god, like only in leftoid and hyper-utilitarian circles are you gonna bump into that a painful non-existence is preferable to a painful existence.
Have you ever fucking been around kids that are in foster care? Have you ever been around kids that are in foster care that grew up in foster care?
Yeah, I've been
around
fucking kids.
They don't want to live like that. They don't want to.
If
I had
Rubble.
Okay, yeah, it's getting a little off. It's getting a little off the rails. Okay, raise your hand if you want to speak. I'll choose an order. Okay, I'm gonna first go with Toft then.
We have sociological literature like the Donahue and Levitt study, as well as other ones that attribute up to 45% of the 55% reduction in crime since I believe the 90s to access to.
I didn't know Malcolm before tonight, but
right. So it's not just
like a very good dude.
Demography.
We have to have a chat with him at some point.
Right now.
Let's not go there. There's also this. It's just the effect on society in general, right? So it's not just like the individual baby who, like, maybe if you were to pull them 20 years later and ask them, like, would you prefer to be like aborted or to have lived? They'll probably say to have lived. But like at the time that they were aborted, they were like a non-sentient clump of cells.
It's a little bit 13, Fiddy. It's a little bit.
And so they're probably non-sentient.
I think I'm with you, Only Fact. I think it is a little bit.
Yeah.
But then again, she is kind of a
weighing the moral value
fascist
of like
piece of
eliminating this non-sentient potential person
maybe
versus
a cheeky follow.
The massive social benefit of improving.
Malcolm, that's why I asked for links earlier because I followed him on
destiny and their
Twitter
social
and
family
and
that ability to control those
YouTube and Twitch
is really beneficial for society, for everyone. And I don't want to live in a society
Someone had
where
Malcolm's
crime
link earlier.
rate spikes up 45% because we've decided that it's wrong to eliminate these clumps of cells.
Okay, can somebody rephrase that as uncharitably as I can? Because basically what I'm so I'll rephrase it as uncharitably as possible.
Please.
Aborting poor whites and disproportionately black people has a positive effect on crime 30 years later.
That's you're doing like literal eugenics shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Abortion
that's really fucked up, actually.
That's the
it's literally eugenics.
That's the pro-choice argument. The pro-choice argument is literally like criminal populations are going to do more.
No.
It's giving the left should go kill the poor.
Also, can I just say, Taftage?
No.
Taftage wants.
You're giving black and poor people the ability to control their destinies.
Totally.
You gotta let Taft respond.
Let me respond.
Yeah, let Taft explain why she wants to kill poor whites.
What the fuck is wrong with you, Connor?
Because it is like the most like absurdly sort of uncharitable interpretation. What you're doing is you're giving poor people the ability to choose when to have children. And when you give them the ability to choose when to have children, they have children in circumstances where they can provide for those children. So it's not that like they're going to have less children overall necessarily.
Are you from the 1850s?
But you know they are.
What the fuck? You
It's
sound
that,
like a Victorian villain. That we can't allow the poors to breed. Like,
No,
what the
I'm
fuck?
saying that they will have children. I'm saying that they should be able to
They'll
choose
breed
when
like
they
rabbits. Yeah, we need to sterilize them all.
Oh my god. I'm saying that they should be able to choose when they have children, because when you allow people to choose when they have children, they choose to have children when they have the ability to provide for those children.
That's
which
actually
is
not
good
remotely
for
true.
society.
Poorer families tend to have more children.
No, but they will prefer to have children when they can provide for those children.
But again, that's
if
not-
you
that's-
ask poor people, they will say, "I would prefer to have a child when I have more ability."
They
to
might
provide
prefer
for the
to,
child."
but that's not the reality that actually comes out of this.
Okay, but when you have access to safe abortion, they are able to.
Well, no,
receive
I'm
that
pro.
reality.
I'm pro-abortion. I'm not arguing that
Right.
point. I'm just saying your weird
you
eugenics is
agree with
fucked
her,
up.
Kevin.
Your weird
Yeah,
eugenics here, where like poor
individual
people need
choice
to be
is not
stopped from
eugenics.
breeding. Like,
Individual choice is not eugenics. If you get knocked up and you're like, holy shit, like this kid is gonna like sleep on a mattress in the backseat of my fucking car while I work my 3 jobs,
Yeah.
and my 62 like odd boyfriends are gonna be in and out of the
That's a
house. They're probably gonna have a
I don't know.
horrible
No, no,
fucking life.
You're-
Malcolm,
that is
Malcolm.
not eugenics.
No, Malcolm.
That is
Still,
I'm not
fucking
saying that you
eugenics.
should like
Wait,
sterilize them. I'm saying that you
please.
should allow them to choose when they have children. So it's a choice about time,
Yeah,
not like
Yeah.
whether or not they have children.
Malcolm, I'm not-
The eugenics argument would be that they're not allowed to have children. That's the eugenics.
Yeah, Malcolm,
argument.
I'm not saying that the point you make there is eugenics or that the pro-abortion argument is eugenics. I'm saying
you're saying,
the
though.
way that Taftage put that was eugenics. Like, that was
No,
really
if people
fucked
are
up.
free to make the
Moments in
choice
their
of when they can get an
beginning.
abortion, that's not eugenics. If it's like,
Yeah,
hey,
it
at this point in time in my life,
black and brown people and poor white people.
No, she's
that
just going on
doesn't
about
mean
like
it's eugenics. Individual choice, individual
She's
choice
just
is
going
not
about-
eugenics.
let's just cleanse
Okay.
the pool of these
Okay.
criminals.
You said
you know.
One second. Okay. True has been waiting for
Condoms
a
are
second.
eugenics,
Stop.
by the way.
You
True
said
has been waiting for.
You said, do you know people who were in foster care? Like, they would rather not be born. Like, some of the best people I know come from
I
the
don't care
foster
about your
care.
anecdotes. I know 10 people for every
Not
one person that you know that wish that they weren't alive because their life was so traumatic because they were in foster care. Like,
It's
I don't
eugenics.
care.
It's
I don't care.
eugenics.
Individual
You
choice
wanna
is
make
not
a
eugenics.
You're cutting
Individual
me off,
choice
by
is
the
not
way. You're
eugenics.
not letting me speak. You're afraid of what I'm saying.
I'm not
You
afraid of what
make
you're
the
saying. I don't
foster
care about
care
your friend of your
better
friend of your
instead
Let her
friend.
saying
finish,
you
though.
want them to fucking
don't care.
die.
I don't
Okay,
care
you
about your
wanna
friend of a
respond?
friend of a friend. I don't care about your friend of a
I'm
friend
not
of a
talking
friend.
about
That
the
was
friend
fun.
of a friend.
Oh, you're not letting me finish.
You're a
You're not
bougie
letting me finish.
motherfucker.
Why are you scared? Why are you scared of my
How
answer?
would I
Why
know
won't you let me
have the
finish?
money to
Why won't you let me
Okay,
finish?
wait.
Why won't you let me
Okay.
finish?
Stop,
Why won't you
please,
let me
both of
finish?
you.
True,
You're
true,
bougie.
Malma.
Why can't I finish?
Okay.
True, Malma.
So-
Can you stop interrupting,
Wait,
please?
Kevin.
This is an outrage.
Stop.
Can I finish,
Everybody
please?
stop. Okay, so
said.
let's be clear. Wait, stop. She's still going. Okay,
Can I
give me a
finish?
second. Yes, you gotta let him finish, then you'll speak, and then you'll be allowed to finish. Don't interrupt each other. We can't hear what you're saying. Continue.
Thank you so much. What I was saying is, I don't care about your friend of a friend that grew up in foster care that is grateful that they're alive. I know people in my own personal life that grew up in foster care and have been like, you know, if my
She's
mom
the
would have
one
gotten an
that
abortion,
decided
I
to
would have
take
been
it to
like
that
abused,
place.
raped, you know, like
She
passed
wanted
around
to
like
make it
37
personal.
different fucking foster homes or whatever. Like, I don't care
Kev,
about
come
your
back.
individual experience. I
Kitty's
care
got
about
claws.
the people in foster care that are like horrifically abused because the people were forced to give birth to them when you could just prevent all of these atrocities from happening in the first place. But please tell me about your friend of a friend. I'm really
A lot
interested.
of people in foster care, their parents didn't want to abort them, by the way. So first
Love
of all,
it.
and second of all, you
I
really
love
like to
Malcolm's
dismiss
energy.
everything and
He's
hand
got
wave.
just such
You
a
all do
lovely
that, and by the way,
sardonic
you guys seem to think I'm
thing.
like a rich person. To me, you all are bougie motherfuckers. So like, I don't know why you talk to me like this is not like I don't come from some extremely fucked up place in life. And the fact that I'm 33 and I'm still living this life isn't telling enough. Like, I guess for you, you gotta spell it out. Like, I don't know. To me, like, the fact that you devalue everything I say without actually hearing what I'm saying makes me disrespect you and what you're saying a lot. I came in listening to what you're saying, trying to bounce off of it, and you've been doing this disrespectful ass shit since the start. So I'm sorry if I'm not gonna take it too hard when you're being rude as fuck.
I don't think that anybody assumes that you came from a place of a special privilege. I really don't.
A friend of a friend and blah blah blah. Like fuck you, dumbass.
That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing is talking about your friend of a friend of a friend who I don't
Can I just say, you're going about
sub IQ in my
you're going
mind.
about people
like,
dismissing.
Your amount of reading people is at -20. You can't tell when I'm from by looking at me or checking my fucking.
And you don't know anything about me either. So why don't we just let
that
that go?
True, Mama. You're going about.
Motherfucker, you probably learned all this in books. Like, that's
oh no, reading books is gay. Oh
my
no.
whole life has been so easy. Oh,
and by the way, I like lowered both your voices because like you're really fucking annoying to me. You can do the same to me. I don't give a shit.
Anyway, so you're going about dismissing. You're going about you're going about people disrespecting.
Logan. Holy fuck.
Okay, well,
Will you shut the fuck up?
You just talked. You gotta let Kevin talk.
No,
you
we're doing
fucking asshole. Just shut the fuck up.
Okay, please, everybody.
Anyway, you're going about people disrespecting or disregarding your opinion, and then you say everyone here's a bougie motherfucker. You don't know any of us. Shut the fuck up. Jesus Christ.
Not everybody.
You literally said you're all bougie motherfuckers. You literally said that.
Honor, when you said that these people
saying like that, yeah.
That when you said something about the left space having an opinion like being
She's a
alive
fucking clown, man.
Being not alive would be better. It would be better if my mom had an abortion. You were saying that exists in the left space. I agree with you. I thought it was kind of funny that you said that. But at the same time, I think that that's a different strategy. Like
calling me
when you
bougie.
talk about harm reduction,
Fuck
I'm
off.
gonna pull this back to harm reduction really quick. When you talk about harm reduction, it's important to phrase everything that you want to logically think through as okay. The most reasonable amount of harm that could happen to me.
Can nobody?
Immediately
can we not ban
down.
paradigm shift
so
this time,
we're not
please?
Really, when we talk about abortion, we're not really talking about the ills of the foster system. We're not really talking about grown people who aren't currently going through abortion. We're specifically talking about the ability of people who need abortions to get them or who want abortions to get them. So I don't necessarily, Malcolm, think that the addition of the ills of the foster care system and the obvious harm that it had on your friends necessarily is a great argument for
known gated community residents.
Well, I'm not talking specifically about my friends. I'm talking like statistically, like there's abuse. Like 80% of people that grew up in foster care report abuse. Like these are undesirable circumstances. Like going from family to family. Most of the time, you're like in control of the state. Like these things are undesirable for most people. And if you, an individual, not at the state level, if you, an individual, is like, damn, like I'm gonna have this kid, I'm not gonna be able to, afford to care for it or whatever. But I can't get an abortion, contraceptive didn't work for me for whatever reason, and you end up having this kid, what are you going to do with it? You can't just like leave it on the side of the road. You're going to put it into the system, and the system has a lot of negative outcomes for a lot of people to go through it, and people that are still in it right now. And so like the outcome of the child is something that I take into consideration as well. Like what is the child's life going to look like if it is born? Like is this kid going to have an abusive family? Is this kid going to be in and out of the system? Is this kid going to have like a higher predilection of being abused because of where they're placed? Like so on and so forth. I think that factors into this decision as well as like a responsible parent where it's like, am I going to be able to provide for this kid
4 or 5 times
if I have it? And a tangential extension of this would be like if you were going to have a kid that was born, with a really severe disability, and it's like, fuck, there's going to be a ton of medical bills. This kid's going to be like in and out of hospitals its whole life. I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to give it a good quality of life. You should be able to make that decision with an individual decision is not eugenics. If you say, fuck, I'm not going to be able to give this kid what it needs to have like a good quality of life, aborting it is probably the best option. So you don't have a kid that's like dying of Huntington's disease in the back of the car.
Like condoms are also eugenics, which is ridiculous.
It's mine. It's mine. No. As somebody who believes in systemic analysis, no, you're wrong. If you have a system that pushes a bunch of poor people and a bunch of poor whites and disproportionate black folk and disproportionate Hispanic folk, you can't just toss up your hands and say, oh, if we're just feeding babies to the fucking wood chipper, well, fuck it. That's better than being alive in a fucked up system. And by the way, there is not a single conservative in this fucking country who would literally pick non-existence over a shitty and traumatic childhood. There is no, like, as a matter of fact, this is the most, like, conservative shit that I've ever said on the fucking Hippy Dippy. This is, like, there is no one on the right wing who would ever say painful existence is not preferable to non-existence totally. That's fucking lunacy.
I have to say this is going to make my skin crawl, but I kind of have to agree with counterpoints here, and that is a terrible state of affairs for everyone.
I mean, that's fine, but I mean, I'm saying
the right wing, Kevin.
Well, no,
if you're gonna have a kid that's gonna have like
it's not a winning argument. Look, I'm
paper fucking skin. Like,
I'm very much.
You can't provide for that kid, and it's gonna suffer. Like, I feel like I'm doing harm if I bring a kid into the world that's gonna have like a horrible fucking quality of life.
Well, no, that's fine.
Wait. Okay, Kevin, please finish.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't think it's a winning argument to be like actually to go to people who you're trying to convince of your political position and say actually non-existence is preferable. Because they're going to tell you to go fuck yourself. Like you're not. That's not a winning electoral or moral strategy. Even if you think it's morally correct, it's still a dumb thing to do.
I'm concerned with like the probability of the best outcome for the child. That's something that I consider when I think about these kind of things. If you guys don't want to consider that, that's fine. But I think it's absolutely fucking insane to say that it's eugenics for somebody to be like, damn, I don't want my kid to have fucking like Huntington's disease. I'm gonna abort it.
Well, no, an individual choice. But the way Taftage described it was eugenics. I don't think individual choice is eugenics. The idea of like purifying populations of criminals and stuff like is some Victorian. That is some mustache twirling madness.
It's not purifying populations. It's allowing people to choose when they have children. So, like, if you have a child, you want to be able to have the child in, like, the best circumstance you can. So you're not forced to raise a child when you're not able to.
And the poor will only raise criminals. You're correct. We need to kill them all, clearly.
Alternatively, modern humans can now choose to never have children. You can now choose to never have any children. And I want to know, is that also... I'm sorry, Dylan.
I think it's legitimate to choose never to have children. I think it's preferable if people in general do have children, but I think you have the right not to have children. Yeah, if that's your choice. Like, ultimately, like the way that I fall on it is that like you should be able to choose when you have children, and if you want to have children, you should be able to have children, and if you want to delay when you have children, you should be able to do that as well. And it would be eugenics if you forced people who are like poor to not have children because you believe they have like inferior genes or something. That would be like a eugenics policy to like modify the genetic pool of the population. But obviously you're not forcing anyone to do anything. You're just allowing them like control of their own lives.
Immediate rebuttal. Eugenics, good. So good, genics, life. No, this is fucking eugenics. It might not be systematized, but as somebody who thinks that people can be you could have racist systems without any racists, I think you can have eugenics.
Counterpoints. The problem with this definition of eugenics is that it becomes so encompassing to include like all laws. And let me give you an example of that. Because listen to me.
That Malcolm was talking about the good.
Oh my God. Let me respond to this. Let me respond to
so obtuse. Holy shit.
The problem with this definition of eugenics is that it's so broad to include anything. So if you include, if you give a certain population a UBI, that would be eugenics because they're probably going to be able to have more children, and therefore, their genes are going to be more in the population. But it's silly. I know you're saying
and we shouldn't encourage the poor to breed. Yeah,
eugenics is so absurd because every law has knock-on effects way down the line.
Okay, so I rolled a couple of grenades your way, mostly for shitposty effect, but let me try to dial it back a little bit, okay? The actual point is that this argument is insufficient, and from a conservative perspective, it's morally barbarous. So saying people just shouldn't have kids, or they should be able to abort their kids so we don't have future criminals. I know that's not technically what you're saying, but that's what I'm hearing.
She's fucking wild.
It's fucking monstrous. And then saying the system is fucked up, therefore non-existence is preferable to a fucked up life. That's also
I'm not being out of order, am I?
Most conservatives,
she is doing eugenics shit, right?
Religious, they accept the fact that life is gonna.
I'm not doing it dirty, am I?
And that a lot of life is about facing suffering and finding meaning, purpose, love, joy, and all that kind of stuff in spite of suffering. So when leftoids bring up suffering as a reason to not exist, we're like, oh, well, we have two options here. Either we fight to get you to believe in life with suffering, or we just let you take yourselves out. And that, the second option is actually quite monstrous as well, because basically we're letting you kill your fucking selves. So, your choice. I've decided antinatalists can antinatal all the fuck they want. I don't give a shit. but you know, it's still fucked up and kind of monstrous.
And the statistics.
That's what I'm hearing.
And the
It's
statistics.
not what you're saying, but it's what I'm hearing.
And the statistics back up what Connor Points is saying. Even though we might not be intentionally saying you're not valid, you should die, right? By giving people this option to choose, the majority of the people, or the majority of the statistics, are following that same trend. It's people that are inner city, lower income levels, and of certain ethnic backgrounds. It's if you look at it from a certain perspective, it could be considered that.
Can I just say, I appreciate that. I appreciate the Tug's very delicate use of wording there. Urban, lower income, of a certain racial background.
No, what Connor was saying is more white people are doing it too. It's not.
You can't force black people to have children because you believe that they should have like a greater representation in the population.
No, they should.
I don't necessarily think that
and if
we should
ban
speak,
abortion,
any of us should
will.
speak on the motherfucking black.
There will be more black people if we ban abortion. That is based and great.
Yeah, that's how they outbreed the whites.
Not your responsibility to determine how black families
exactly.
That's the bottom line here.
They should be determining this.
And I want more babies to be growing up to vote in these different elections so that we can have a great society with less dead babies.
It should be up to black families to
It's
choose
up to the
and to have
individuals.
their families.
Can we change the topic? And we all agree that like birth control should be like way more accessible and potentially even free, because especially like in Canada, birth control, most people don't know, but you gotta like pay for it. If here in Canada, like abortion is like free, basically it's included with all the taxes and everything you pay. Shouldn't birth control should be given out for free to everybody, and they can choose which one's better for them for free? And they like, why are we paying for birth control when like what the fuck? Like, it's way more traumatizing to get pregnant. Trust me, to get pregnant, to get to any amount and lose the clump of cells, okay, if that's what it is for you. Even if it's just a clump of cells for you, it's still kind of fucked up, you know. You're bleeding out, you need somebody watch over you, you're falling out, you lack of energy. It can last for days. It's like salmonella, the type of pain you get when you lose that shit, even when it's tiny. So I think birth control should be way more accessible and like free and really promoted to everybody. And I think if you believe it's a life and you don't want abortion, you should be on board with that.
I think that's a really good point, because I think I mentioned earlier, but I'll mention it again.
It is a good point. It's just like salmonella.
Are in pro-life communities also advocate for abstinence only.
It's like a bad case of the shit.
Which leads to people not understanding how their bodies work or how they may or may not get pregnant in the first place. But also, these communities restrict access to contraceptives, and that's super counterproductive. It's like pussy diarrhea.
It's just pussy
and a lot of
diarrhea,
evangelical Christians consider like contraceptives to be like a form of abortion anyway, because they think conception is like life or whatever.
Exactly, life is stored in the balls. Jerking off should be illegal. Outrageous.
To get on a high horse.
Amen.
Do y'all really think the conservative people, do y'all really think that it's like not morally okay to just choose to never have children, to like not contribute to that part of society? I'm confused.
You're free to choose to not have children, yeah.
But do I think that's less preferable than contributing? Yeah, I do think it's less preferable.
Okay.
Okay, but it's not like humanity.
But there's plenty of people you can.
It's not like humanity's running out of people. Like the population of the Earth is going fucking crazy.
Replacement rate of like 1.5 or something.
Well, that's America specifically, but yeah.
Connor, you know what would be fun to talk about?
No,
what would be fun to talk about is either the moral obligation or the moral non-obligation to take care of youth. I actually experienced no drive to be a biological parent, but I think it's a moral obligation for me to someday have foster children.
Oh, I actually, this was one of my tangents, or going to be one of my tangents. I was going to say, if you choose to opt out, you can go into like your apartment and play video games and masturbate endlessly and fucking, I don't know, whatever the fuck you want to do. But it would be preferable to me if you did look at the next generation coming up and you said, hey, I had like a fucked up life. These are the things that went wrong. I want to make sure other people have a better life. Therefore, I'm going to contribute this to society. So even if you're not contributing genetically, you contribute in another way.
Oh, okay.
Human minds are assets.
Yeah, there are many ways you can contribute that does not include having biological children.
Yeah. And I prefer it. I prefer biological children, basically from like a personal narrative story. Like, literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people died so I could be here. You know, they survived like the freezing cold and food and deprivation and famine and probably some wars and some rape and some pillaging and all that kind of shit. And they all suffered so I could exist. So I want to pay that gift forward. To like I want to pay it back to the people who struggle to survive on my behalf, and then I want to pay it forward to the next generation.
So you're just cooking
now
yourself.
we have
You're cooking yourself to thousands of dead generations you never met.
Yeah, of course.
Brilliant.
Like the social contract.
Civilization depends on having children.
Yeah,
not white ones though. Not white ones.
There's a quote. There's a quote from Edmund Burke who's basically saying like the social contract theory is incomplete. The social contract is not just between a citizen and its society; it's between the living and the dead and those yet to be born. I think that's totally true.
Heard that, yeah.
Most people in any given society or demographic will choose to have biological children, but certainly for people who don't, that's still a valid option, and they still can contribute positively to the group.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't like the fucking. I know it's a meme, but I don't like the hedonism of like, I'm just going to go into my own quarter and play video games and jerk off and I'm not going to do shit and fuck y'all and you're fucking stupid for having a responsible normie life. I'm going to go be fucking neat over here and eat my chicken tendies and fucking do some meth while I'm playing League of Legends, you know?
That's exactly
But
what
not advocate for
are.
that either. That is not something that I would
Exactly, but
advise.
that's not
Connor,
that's
Connor.
See, that would be
Wait, stop. Connor, I
Yep.
will not have you bad talk half my audience, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
That sounds like a great activity after the abortion
Lay
clinic
back on the
visit.
meth. That's really the part.
You
that's
forgot to
really
get an
correct.
abortion in there. Get an abortion, get high on meth.
Also,
Well,
but that's not the
Everyone.
majority. The majority of people who don't have kids don't live that life either. That's you can be a very productive and worthwhile member of society whilst
They're like
also.
soy bug
I'm-
men. They've got
I'm
Funko
on
Pop
Twitch.
collections instead of children.
I'm on Twitch and Twitter and people are constantly posting these opinions. Am I not supposed to take these opinions seriously?
Not
Like,
really.
am I not supposed to take Twitch seriously?
No.
everything in moderation,
Have
Connor.
you
A
been
little bit
on
of meth
Twitch?
is okay.
Twitch is
A
full
little
of
bit of meth is
absolute
okay.
pricks. Twitch is full of the worst people on earth. Some of them watch Dylan Burns' channel. It's embarrassing. What's wrong with these fucking people?
Oh, Connor's got to go and do math and jerk off and play League of Legends.
That was dedication.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask
He's
him a
getting
question.
some
Based.
tendies right now.
Based.
Tendies.
I would be a neat forever. I'm kind of a neat now, but if I could be a neat forever if there were no children in the foster care system who needed parents. Like, that's just, to me, a moral obligation of, like, okay, I gotta get my life together so I can, like, help the kids, help the old people. That just, to me,
That's a
is-
really good impulse because it's like a duty to like community and to future generations,
Dylan,
and that's
grab
how we
Connor.
have good societies.
Oh, grab him? Okay.
Yeah.
True?
I just want to ask the Turk what he thinks about my take about the birth control being like free and accessible, like easily, so there'd be no abortion.
I mean, it's
As much as
it is
possible.
relatively accessible here in Texas. It's provided by the ACA.
Someone
that it has
gifted
to
me
be
a
No,
salt
you're
to
provided.
going
Dylan
in
Burns
specifics, but like, what
TV.
about it being like free and accessible to everybody? You don't like that, and why?
I think having it accessible would be
Delightful.
a good thing. The matter of cost is always a sticking point for me as a fiscal conservative. But I think as accessible as it is today is not a bad thing.
But that's part of the problem with the fiscal conservative addition to that, is that you want people to be born, but then as soon as they're born, fuck them, they're on their own. Like, it's...
Well, pay a lot more money in welfare.
I'll take that argument.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of other programs that I would love to fund more. I would love to put additional funding into foster care homes. I would love to put additional funding into border processing so that we can have more asylees, more people coming in legally. There's a lot of other things that I would love to pour money into because I am a compassionate person and I want them to thrive and be alive here in the United States.
but that's not
there's also other programs that shouldn't be funded and we should stop wasting money over. So I don't disagree that having accessible birth control is a bad thing, but it's like, okay, is having it funded through the ACA and requiring your employment to fund that I think that's a way to do it. I don't know if we want to debate that, but I think that's a thing that most conservatives would not have a problem with.
Wouldn't the employer be happy to give birth and control so their people don't get pregnant and have to take leave and maternity leave?
Yeah,
and
there's
all
perverse
that?
incentives there.
I mean,
Wouldn't that be good?
there's already laws and stuff that have requirements of like acceptable insurance stuff. So it's like, you know, there are ways to say that needs to be provided.
Also, there is
okay, so
something
I'm
slightly
There are still restrictions that prevent a decent amount of people from accessing it easily.
Yeah, we should fix that.
Well, we'll define
Absolutely,
Even
absolutely.
in Canada,
easy.
you have to pay. If you're poor, like, and you're not on welfare, like, you have to pay. Like, if you're a single mom or whatever, and you're out working this job and that, and you're not on welfare, like, you gotta pay, like, for your birth control. But most people don't know that. You gotta
So
pay
the
for
question
your
is
teeth,
then, what
birth
is
control.
easy and what is too easy and what is not easy enough? All right. So it's, you know, if you go to the local CVS and you say you need birth control, the head pharmacist there is probably going to talk to you to the little booth or whatever and say, hey, how bad do you need it? Here's the program you need to apply for. Sign this paperwork and it's paid for. And they hand it to you that day. It's like, it's not that it's not acceptable. There are easy hoops to jump through.
No, but, like, I guess
Identifying
I'm
more
saying
of
there's
an
some places where it's
issue.
not like that yet.
More of an issue with an insurance sort of bureaucratic type of issue, like
that situation I just listed had
Yeah.
no insurance in it. You can the pharmacist has the ability to issue these things through public programs that provide for this kind of funding.
I see. I'm apparently not aware of that public program, or maybe it doesn't exist in Louisiana.
It's a state
the way
by
that
state thing.
the way that I and most of my friends get birth control for free is through either Medicaid or Medicare, and then going to somewhere like Planned Parenthood or another clinic that offers free
And Planned Parenthood could continue to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They could stay open and provide that
well,
service to the public.
ultimately, the way to cut down on the number of abortions is to have A, proper education, and B, free and easy access to contraception. So you should have federal trucks full of condoms and they're just throwing it out to people. Just fucking get as much contraception out there as possible. It's the best for
But this
everyone.
was a
Just like
victory
my
for the white
education
race.
point, the
Kevin.
education point is really important too, because just having access to it doesn't mean that people will be able to make the right choices for understanding which one might be the best for them. So I think they definitely need to go hand in hand.
You gotta educate people on the importance of life and how hard it is to get pregnant and to get an abortion, even if you think you want one. When you get pregnant, you might change your mind, and that'll fuck you shit up because hormones will kick in and all that stuff. So, like, you really gotta make. That's why my point was to say that it is murder. I didn't mean to cut you off, but to really put value on that, because that way people might be more careful. Like, as a young teenager,
She didn't
if
mean
you
to
don't
cut her off,
think
but she did again cut her off.
about
You
how
know.
hard it is to get one, you might not take it more lightly, like I did. So that's what I want.
Well, in true Mama, just to modify your language a little bit, so there's something called homicide, and homicide is like the justified killing of another person. If nobody is like willing to embrace murder, it's because murder is like specifically the unjustifiable killing of somebody.
Yeah.
But I do
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
your general point.
True, Mama. I did
of,
try and
like,
explain
trying to
this before we got started, that the word murder is specifically an illegal killing. Well, that's
And I know I
Right,
spoke on that too. I think using the word killing is the only real appropriate term. Murder is not accurate.
Yeah, but then I also want to address this back to the Turk, where, like, you're like, oh, well, as a conservative, I would love these certain social programs that would help out with people. And to address Kevin or whatever, I think the reason why this falls on deaf ears is because if you look at charities, like, there's like shitloads of faith-based charities for, adoption and childhood planning and church shit and canned food drives and helping out poor people and all that kind of shit. But I do get that it's not enough, and then that's where I want to pivot right and throw a punch to the right. Basically, like, I hope Reaganism, like Reagan conservatism fucking dies. Like, the rhetoric of the scariest thing you can hear is, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help or whatever. That shit needs to die with the boomers. Because the truth is, I've been a part of public institutions, I've been a part of private institutions, and everybody's a fucking asshole. It doesn't matter if they're in private or public institutions. If we actually want healthy, happy societies, if we want the positive eugenics that President Taftaj wants, then we have to have some level of redistributive economics in order to create happy, healthy societies. And so Reaganism needs to fucking die.
true.
And one thing to add on to this, it's like, I donate to all sorts of causes. I live my beliefs many times over. I wish as a society, y'all would enable people like me to provide more for these things, provide for better tax incentives, better all this other stuff. Because if as a pro-life person, and we're going to outlaw abortion, I want to help solve this problem. Granted, there needs to be additional laws that go and fund this stuff, and there needs to be some deregulation in some instances, not in others. But it's like, as a society, we need to solve the problem of these babies being killed, and we need to provide for that solution and not just wave it off. I completely hear y'all saying, "Oh, we don't care about kids once they're born." It's like that's not a correct statement.
Turk,
That's
so,
just being radical.
So counterpoint's argument was that boomer Reaganism needs to die, and your response was, we need tax cuts and deregulation, which is just more fucking Reaganism. That's what you've just described, more Reagan.
No, you completely glossed over the I want to be able to donate more money instead of it being a tax cut.
I think what Connor's trying to get at is that there's, or at least what I got from it is something that I think about a lot, which is that America has a propaganda problem. Not that it has too much propaganda, but that it has shitty, not enough propaganda. It's like
I think I've lost my mind because he just repeated himself.
Oh, Jack in the Box, back before they started having the really funny ads with the live action Jack. Man, before that, Jack in the Box had fell off. That's America right now. Sorry, I'm getting really tired.
No,
so America fell off. We're not cool anymore. We don't have any government control over what people think is cool anymore. I can't think of another word besides cool. America is in its flop era.
Can I just say, has anyone considered
change into the guard?
Has anyone considered ratioing America on Twitter? I think it's the only answer.
True. Shoe on Head has ratioed President Biden several times.
True, but he doesn't even know what Twitter is, let's be honest. He has no idea what any of that is.
She ratioed Medicaid in the White House.
Yeah, but actually, I do think we do need a generational change into the guard. I'm hearing Xers and even boomers coming around on this where they're like, oh, oops, we did fuck up a little bit, and we do need young people to step up because basically, like, they're watching Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, they're watching these people's brains fry live on television, and they're like, holy fuck, why are our leaders like what? Bernie Sanders, God love him, isn't he like fucking 76 at this point? And and people are still encouraging him to run. It's like, dude, you're 2 years past your fucking expiration date. Go sit on a fucking beach chair, take a fucking nap, and drink like a lightly alcoholic beverage.
Well, I think it has to be said that we haven't even really touched on it at all. Joe Biden and the American federal government's response so far has been nothing short of fucking disgraceful. They've done nothing. They've done the liberal version of thoughts and prayers. Basically, you're on your own.
No, they're saying they're gonna do the abortions anyway, probably on federal land or something.
Well, that would be good.
I think they just need more power. Like, if they're going to get abortion legislation pushed through, they can't do that with the filibuster.
I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying I think that's the last news I saw about it.
So I'm not sure they can do a lot, at least not in the way that progressives would want from them.
The only thing that I can think of is they can do a 51-49 split, basically nuke the filibuster, but if they create some kind of like exception or whatever, that can be capitalized on Republicans the second that they use it.
And Republicans are probably going to win big in the midterms.
We'll see. Roe versus Wade could blunt the momentum.
That's really going to be a determining factor here.
But actually, what would be interesting is if they did that right now and then Republicans squeaked out a slim majority, then there's actually like a chance that the Republicans could do a federal abortion ban.
Yeah. And then everyone would be like, holy shit, what did the Democrats do here?
Yeah, and then they would lose every national election after. Sorry.
Every election that comes up, I feel like the narrative is and always has been, vote or die. We have to vote. It's so important. And it falls on deaf ears, I think, because we've been hearing it for so long. But I think that we need to change our messaging around this because it is crucial that people do get out and vote their opinions.
Well, exactly.
It's the only way that we can really see what
the
general public wants. And so even though it feels exhaustive and it feels like, oh, maybe my vote's not going to matter, those are false narratives.
Exactly, but this is my argument. Yeah, this is my argument though. If Joe Biden's to go to the country, what is his selling point on this? He gets asked, what are you going to do about Roe versus Wade? What's your record on this? What does he tell to anyone?
I wrote a strongly worded letter.
He's done nothing.
Right.
He's done fucking
AOC
nothing.
Does a lot. Recently, she's been posting a lot about how if the left does want to see a challenge to this, we need to hold our elected officials responsible in a very, very real way. And we need to let them know that our votes for them are under the expectation that they're going to act on our wishes.
Kind of like student loan debt. Universal health care, minimum wage.
Like a lot of these issues that keep getting talked about.
Yeah, the Democrats are
actually being.
The Democrats
like,
are feckless
adopted.
bastards. Yeah, they don't do anything. They,
So it's
they
definitely
like
it's time
they
for
can
accountability.
they
for
have
sure.
control of both chambers in theory and the presidency, and yet they seem to have like 5% of the actual fucking power. It's embarrassing.
And we had like what, a month's worth of warning on this too, and there wasn't really a lot of
Well,
good
did you
planning or like
yeah, did
coming
you see
together to kind of come up with like a,
This
okay,
is
well,
maybe the
It's
real
because they
conspiracy
don't.
theory.
Yeah.
with
it's a
Kamala
real
Harris
conspiracy
being
theory.
interviewed, and she was like, "Well, what could we have done? You're the fucking vice president. You didn't have a plan for this. Like, what the? It's embarrassing. It genuinely is shocking."
Okay, so the real conspiracy theory is that it's like a fucking fundraising gimmick. Like, that's the fucking real conspiracy theory. Because, like, it fucking happened, you know, Dianne Feinstein, or I don't know, it wasn't Dianne, it was the other one that looks like a lizard. But, like...
Are you saying the other Jewish person?
Pelosi.
This is anti-Semitism.
I think you mean
I
Pelosi.
I hope she's not Jewish. Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, I meant Nancy Pelosi, so hopefully she's not Jewish. I just meant that she looked like a lizard.
Oh, so you hope she's not Jewish?
So...
It's just more anti-Semitism. It's outrageous.
Wait.
Absolutely terrible. Incredible.
This is
Cancelled.
Well, okay.
Fucking cancelled.
I went after Taftosh for the eugenics. I guess I can take a little anti-Semitic heat tonight. That's fine. So the point that, like, you know, basically Democrats, if they actually won something, they would lose their reason for existence. So they kind of have to create like a perpetual crisis in order to continue to fundraise. I know that's like maybe college level freshman year fucking bullshit. I'm sure plenty of Democrats actually care about real policy, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, it does feel weak, doesn't it? That like literally the cornerstone of the Democratic Party was, we're the party of the minority, we're the party of women, we're the party of reproductive rights, we're the party of progressivism. And if I was going to say the repeal of the assault weapons ban was one of the libertarian achievements of the Republican Party, then Roe versus Wade was one of the crown jewels of the Democrat Party, and they just had it snatched from their fucking heads.
Well, can I just to counter that slightly, with a bit of whataboutism, I suppose. I think both parties do the thing that you've just outlined there of perpetual sort of drama for financial aid. The Republicans have done nothing but fundraise on the back of like scares about CRT and drag queens and fucking just Mr. Potato Head and just weird culture war shit for the last like 5 years. That's all they've done.
But default goes to the conservatives because all they're trying to do is conserve the status quo. So if they scaremonger, maintain the status quo, that's not half as hard as putting forward a positive vision. And if anything, there's literally like a 2-hour conversation that Taftosh and I had where I was like, where's the positive vision for the right? If we don't figure this out, then we're going to be dominated by Christian nationalists and ethno-nationalists and fucking all that kind of shit. We have to have like a coherent vision for the right, and this is the one thing the left beats us on. And Taftosh still hasn't gotten back to me. So
can I just say, I don't know why you're using
not a great beginning to her presidency.
I don't know why you're using the future tense there, as if republicanism isn't run by those very same people right now.
In reference to what?
You said that if we don't come up with X, Y, and Z, they're going to dominate us. They already do.
Oh, well, I'm expecting the pendulum. Yeah, okay. I'm expecting the pendulum. I'm expecting that this was probably the biggest achievement of the American right wing for the next decade. And what's going to happen is it will probably take a decade for the left to swing everything back their way. But at the end of that decade, if Republicans or rightoids don't have an answer for what a positive future of the country looks like, we're going to be fucked. Because basically, if you're talking about like demography, like mild racism towards Hispanic people is probably untenable, considering immigration trends. Christian theocracy is probably not tenable because of the increasing secularization of the planet. Global warming or climate catastrophe is probably not tenable if we don't come up with technological solutions that actually like mitigate the consequences of CO2 production. So all of these things will come to a head within a generation. If we don't have an answer, we're fucked.
It's a real shame then that the same Supreme Court just ruled that the EPA can't even do shit about it. They're just going to let the planet fry. Yeah.
No, the EPA can regulate the emissions process. They cannot say that there's certain standards other than that they can do.
Yeah, so they've been neutered.
I think there's also another option which is that the pendulum is kind of like horseshoe theory, and it may not really exist, or it may not exist in all cases. And so the pendulum may never swing back, and the fact that a lot of ethno-nationalists are currently in the right wing, and especially in Trump's right wing, could mean that that entire part of the quote-unquote right wing could dissolve. And it could become something either much worse, or it could cease to exist.
Before this, I started off by watching
and there's a lot of time between now and then.
Yeah, we're also getting a little bit off topic from what we're
true.
actually supposed to be discussing right now. We're talking about the future of the Republican Party.
Well, I can tie it back in. I can say that my unaborted kids are going to be of voting age when this pendulum swings back. So I'm doing my part.
Yeah,
to
left or
progress.
right.
Oh, Turk.
Yeah, I'm doing my
Where's your
part.
kids?
I'm doing
You
my
say
They're all
that.
aborted. They're all aborted.
Right
Kids
agenda.
are
Not
probably
that
going to be
leftists
left wing
don't
when they're
wanna
18.
have kids. They just
No.
want to be able to
Turk's
choose
kids.
how and when they do it.
Turk's kids
No,
are going to be
it's called
communists.
raising your kids with respect and treating them as human beings and not trying to shove down agendas.
So they're
Well,
Maoists.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I
there's
think that's
hormones.
bullshit. I
Turk's
think
kid's
that's
gonna go
bullshit.
around-
I think you always have to shove your bullshit down a kid's throat. Like that's
No, you don't.
parenting.
No, you don't.
No, actually, so this is something that I want to shout out to the conservatives or the rightoids. Like, we all do propaganda. We all make choices about the moral messaging that we send to our kids. And even if you like look at like American achievements, like the space race or World War II or some shit, there was always like pro-ally, pro-Western propaganda. It's
Can I
whether
just-
or not your propaganda is.
Can I just say
advocating
America
something good.
didn't win the fucking space race. They got to the moon first, and that's it. Russia beat you to everything else. The idea that America
Yeah.
won the space
Not true.
race
Have
is
they
fucking
made it to
embarrassing.
the
It's a
moon in
joke.
the past
Not
50
true.
years? Like they've had 50 years. What have they done since?
They had an international space station 20 years before you did.
Who was on the moon?
International?
Well, topic again.
I cannot
I
bring
can talk
this
shit
back.
about the
I
Russians.
can't
Look,
bring it
I'm
back.
gonna
saying-
close. But we gotta get off the space race thing. The Americans won. We all agree. Who's next in the discussion? Or should we
Yeah.
start wrapping up?
You-
We've been
you-
going for a
yeah,
while.
Yuri Gagarin was from Utah, wasn't he? I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who that person is outside of like Russian nerds. Therefore, we won. So
First man in space.
everybody knows Neil Armstrong.
True.
I'm just saying,
Right.
Soviet dogs beat you into space. I'm just saying.
And then died.
They're
Yeah, and then
suicide
died.
bombers.
That
Yeah,
doesn't
this is
count.
that's their version of a suicide bomber. They
Soviets
murdered a
aborted
dog
been
and were supposed to
dogs
applaud
in
it.
space.
The dog
If
should have been
wait,
aborted. It
Kevin,
wouldn't have died in
if
space.
I go out back and I shoot a dog and kill that dog, I go to jail. Soviets get around. of applause.
American shuttles were blowing up in the 80s. Fucking hell! Like,
Yeah, but Americans can
Come
sign
on.
contracts and agree to it. That's a dog. You can't do that.
how'd you know? You have no idea of the contract negotiations between Laika and the Soviet government. You have no idea.
That is true. I don't know the
Come on now.
specifics, but I doubt the dogs. I doubt the dog consented. Oh, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, Dylan, I'm just speaking for me. My thing is like, the left is fucked. Y'all got a decade to figure it out when it comes to abortion. You're gonna have to get your shit together because Twitter is not going to like. If Twitter's any indication of what's like the future of democratic politics in the United States, then you guys are pretty fucked. Some of this shit is fucked up, some of it's defensible, and then some of the arguments that are made are absolutely morally abhorrent. But I also understand like the utilitarian calculus of Taftaj's eugenics.
Can I just
So that's kind of me.
Can I just pipe back
wrapping
because
up
this was the
what I
thing that you
understand from it.
you mentioned earlier about the popularity contest. Again,
Hmm.
nationwide, Democrats get more votes than Republicans consistently. It's just the weird system of the Electoral College and 2 senators per state,
Do you know-
which is an
You know what your
inbuilt
chances
right
of
wing
repealing
fucking.
the electoral college.
No,
and
no,
the
but that's the
Second
point.
Amendment
You
are
say
fucking goose
the
eggs
left
to
is
shit's
fucked. It's
code.
because the system's shit. It's not because people don't want to vote
well,
for those things.
You shouldn't have agreed to it 300 years ago. You're fucked.
Well, I didn't. I was.
He didn't. He
I,
lost.
I was
though,
wearing a
so
red
maybe-
coat
Yeah, I
at
was
the
gonna
time.
say,
It's
you-
fine.
You
Y'all
made
lost.
a geopolitical mistake of being born in the wrong fucking country. So but that's what are you gonna do? So for instance, like as a matter of fact, this is a perfect. So Dylan, it's related to the original topic by talking about the political path forward for Democrats to get legislation in on a federal level in order to enshrine abortion rights across the United States, or to push back culturally and on the states level where they get it through the state legislatures. Okay, so I want to address Kevin full.
I like how you had to justify your breaking of the rules. Like I know I'm gonna break the rules, but let me just reel it in
Listen,
somehow.
I'm tying it-
Therefore, I'll allow it.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's all a circle. So Kevin, like this, if y'all are tweeting that shit in fucking 10 years, then that's gonna suck. Because basically, like, the Electoral College is the Electoral College. The chances of it being repealed within the next decade or probably within the next century is almost zero. Same thing with the Second Amendment. So you can fucking piss and moan about it, but if it doesn't change shit, then you're wasting political energy that could be spent on other things that might be more productive.
Well, no, I'm not.
So you're like, the game is rigged.
No.
Okay,
My,
so
my,
it's
my
rigged, so
point
how are you gonna
wasn't.
play the game to win.
My point wasn't about playing the game. My point was rather more to push back on the idea that the left is fucked or that the right is winning the popularity contest. It isn't true. It's just not.
Yeah, I think the
fundamentally not
left
true.
is winning the popularity contest for sure. I also don't really buy this. The left is like very effective in a lot of ways.
Right now.
Yes.
But Connor's talking about in like 10 years when the pendulum swings back. What
Well,
I was just
he's
writing
saying
down
that
is
it's gonna
that
swing left,
the
right?
left is currently vocalized by these whiny responsibility avoiders. I'm not saying that's the majority. I'm saying it's vocalized by them, and that's what Connor's talking about reading on Twitter and shit. So if those people are still tweeting that in 10 years, then that means that we are still avoiding responsibilities like what the trad shit that Connor is trying to conserve as a conservative, which is things like building families and building future generations.
Hey, Connor, I have a question for you. Do you think that the pendulum is going to swing left or right? Because I thought you were saying it was going to swing left.
No, I'm saying it's swinging right, and I'm saying it's swinging right now. So what I mean by that is, it seems like the lefty culture war shit dominated, and the most like crazy response that the right wing had was on YouTube. That's what it felt like for the past like 5-10 years. But Trump was a manifestation of real right-wing power, actually got the Supreme Court nominees into the thing. Mitch McConnell navigated that entire situation, very Machiavellian. And as a result, we now have a conservative majority on the Supreme Court. So the question is, are Democrats and are leftists, leftoids, progressives, liberals, are they smart enough to re-maneuver back where they can see social power? And then is the right, so I kind of agree with you that the left is very powerful in a cultural sense, where a majority of the media that you consume is going to be left, center, liberal, or progressive. But at the same time, I also see like very aggressive rejection of that culture, and I'm kind of wondering is that going to blossom and grow, or is that going to kind of
agree? Because I thought you were saying the opposite, and I was like, I don't know if I agree, but I agree. I think we are seeing a pendulum swing to the right, especially around a lot of the left-wing like cultural dominance. You see certain left-wing ideas which were able to blossom and grow within like very left-wing circles, especially university system, but weren't like really effectively challenged. And so once they got like exposed to the public, they got like sort of torn apart. Like I think critical race theory is a good example of this.
Did I just stumble into a PragerU video? What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, so that and also like trans stuff. I think the left-wing people have like really pushed trans stuff to probably ridiculous levels, and we're going to say swing back on that. I also think geopolitically, I think America's going to regain a lot of confidence as you know, Russia and China both like fail to achieve certain strategic goals. America's probably going to see itself as more dominant and therefore more self-critical.
Oh yeah, so I was gonna say I want to give a conciliatory branch to the left though, because like one of the jokes is that like you know, well actually it's not even a joke, it's just true at this point. At the right wing now, and the right wing in a couple of years is gonna be like, I'm not transphobic, I have a trans friend, and look at my trans conservative pundit, and like I'm not kidding, that
probably.
Not only is we already know this.
So are you saying that Taft might be a useful idiot for the right then?
No, she's a useful genius for the right. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly, because I'm going to make sure that they actually were brought to a reasonable middle ground where the right is.
No, in 10 years. No, in 10 years, they're still going to be calling you a groomer. They'll all still be calling you a groomer.
No. Actually,
I mean, I don't interact with those people.
Yeah,
but they're the ones writing the laws. It's not a matter of you interacting personally with them.
But I'm supporting them, so I don't know how I'm like helping them.
Okay, so I just want to make one joke. There's a bunch of super straight people in my chat, and they all say that Taftaj has them questioning. Okay,
my one joke is that if we trans every child, there will be no abortion. So maybe we should look into that.
Well, I was about to say when this pendulum swings back, America gets its first Antifa president, then the forced feminizations begin. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't fucking wait.
Dope.
Okay, well. maybe chill out with that on Twitter, because basically, just to point out
the world doesn't exist on Twitter, for God's sake.
Okay,
Go outside,
okay, but it
Connor.
does exist on Facebook, because what happens is
Go
your
outside,
shit is screenshotted.
Tell that to your mainstream media that Twitter is not a legit news source and that they need to stop looking at it. That way, it's cut off at the source.
Facebook.
Well,
Okay,
we'll just
now
have to
here's
wait for
what's gonna
Elon
happen.
Musk to take it over and drive it into the ground, man. Yeah.
Go to
Okay, can I explain-
CNN.com and you'll see a bunch of articles that have tweets on
About
them.
tweets.
Within the first 2 paragraphs, you'll see a tweet by some prominent liberal or progressive person.
Yeah, lazy
not only
journalists
that-
doing lazy journalism. Yeah.
Okay,
It's
Kevin,
just
Legitimate
Twitter
news
does
sources.
it that.
Okay,
Legitimate news
Reel it in,
sources
reel it
advertise
in,
that.
reel it in, reel it in.
They don't.
Reel-
They don't.
I'll reel it in. I'll reel it in.
Nope.
So,
Fantastic.
Okay, no.
Kurt,
Okay, so
Kurt,
How long is he gonna go?
No,
How long is
stop,
he gonna go?
Stop.
Fucking
Stop.
hell.
Counter.
Turk, you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna mute you all. Okay. We live in peace and harmony. Okay. We've been going on this for about 2.5 hours. My question is, do you guys want to end anytime soon, or do you want to go for the full 3.5 hours on this?
Release
Because I
us,
feel like
Father.
I think like we've probably been through enough that we could start to look towards ending this.
Yeah, once we started getting onto the space race, it went a bit.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
I
sort of
ask
hit
if
all of
anyone
the
wants to like,
relevant-
join me and continue talking. I'm going to continue streaming, so I'm down to
Okay.
continue talking. But yeah, Hippy Dippy's kind of going off the rails.
It is going off the rails. And so I want to give everybody a chance to wrap up and go their separate ways. So we're going to start wrapping up with counterpoints, wrap up the topic, and, give yourself a shout out.
Okay, so I reject this assertion that Twitter isn't a real place. I do believe that it's the most hyperbolic, vicious, aggressive, shitty place on the planet, but I still think it's a real place. And there's a propagandistic edge to this that you need to be aware of. The most hyperbolic, shitty, leftoid fucking tweets are screenshotted with and without their likes. They are, and if they go viral, then that's even worse. And they're put in Facebook groups to say, oh, look at the leftoids, they're all fucking insane and they want to groom your kids and murder them and blah, 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 blah. And on top of that, they are featured on, like, the most viewed cable news program in the country right now. So maybe, like, start treating it like it's a real place, like these are your genuine opinions. When it comes to the actual topic, I kind of said what I already said, which is rightoids are probably going to overcommit. They're going to fuck some shit up. They're going to create a backlash. Leftoids are going to come back. I don't know if leftoids are competent enough to achieve a comeback, and we'll see how it kind of goes. If you're interested in any of the shitposts or memes that I posted tonight, or you're interested in Warhammer 40,000, which is a science fiction universe that's hyper violent and super fun, then typing counterpoints common spelling into YouTube, or just check me out on Twitch at _counterpoints_. You'll find me in both places, and we just broke 25K on YouTube, so it's a good time in my neck of the woods. So I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. It was fun, and I'll probably hang out for a little bit longer with Toph.
Okay. I'm now going to throw it over to Johnny.
Hello, you guys. Thank you guys so much for this panel. This was really fun. If you've never seen me before, hello, my name is Johnny Scarlett, also known as Johnny. I am an educational variety streamer right here on Twitch. We talk about everything from philosophy to art to math to science. That's about it for me. And yeah, thanks Dylan, thanks everybody. I don't think that there's anything that we haven't covered, by the way. We got all the way to the space race. Closing statements are fucked.
Kevin?
Yes, hello, I'm Kevin Logan. You can find me at KFLogan1875 here on Twitch and on Twitter and YouTube and all those places. In terms of wrapping up the topic, bodily autonomy is massively important. People having the right to Medicare, to their own medical care and their own decisions is hugely important. The decision by the Supreme Court is shoddy as fuck, based on not on real law, but on religious doctrine, frankly. I personally think that America is headed down a really difficult and bad path, given this and several other decisions by the Supreme Court, including allowing people, public employees, to engage in religious guided fucking nonsense stuff. The football coach on the halfway line, all of that shit, the reduction of EPA rules, etc., etc. America is in a really bad place, and something vastly important needs to happen, and unfortunately the person at the helm is unsuited to doing anything remotely radical, so nothing's going to fucking change. Doomer pill out.
Madam?
Thanks. To wrap up the subject, I do acknowledge that Roe was built on shaky ground and as bad law. However, in the same vein, this decision is also bad and will have a lot of dangerous consequences. I think it's important for all of us to acknowledge that the majority of Americans do support safe and legal abortion, at least up to some point. And if we can focus on finding legislation that is representative of the majority and can represent a compromise, well, neither on the extreme end are going to be happy. That's what's in the best interest of all of us overall. As for me personally, I am a sex-positive feminist liberal. I'm also a sex worker. I do some politics streams in relation to human rights, women's issues, etc., etc. I'm also online in non-political ways, and you can find me on twitch.tv/Madam Genevieve or Twitter, Madam_Genevieve, and I'll put those in the chat.
Does anyone have
PDI?
that?
Malcolm?
I am goddammit Malcolm on everything. I mostly talk about trans stuff from like a trans masculine perspective. I do all trans masculine / all trans panels every other Monday, so I know that there's a few transgenders lurking. You're free to participate if you want to. And I enjoyed this conversation. I'm chill to talk more in depth with anybody at any time if they wish. Kind of wrapping up the topic, I think that it all comes down to like an issue of bodily autonomy for me and like the best outcomes for like the mom, the family, and the child as well. And I think that kind of this precedent, like I said at the beginning, is kind of scary to kind of revisit past things that are kind of, kind of like a precedent, and kind of revisiting them and unearthing them is something that is kind of scary, especially with considering like the gay marriage being discussed in the opinion and so on and so forth. The other thing I wanted to share is that trans masculine people can still get pregnant on testosterone. So if you're a trans guy out there and you're on T, you can still get knocked up. So be careful with that.
True.
And
By the way,
finally, I know that I kind of opened this saying that I was Catholic. I never said that I was a
Genevieve,
good Catholic, but I am in fact Catholic. So take that as you will. And I appreciate everybody's time. And I had a good time. Thanks everybody for contributing and chatting. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Taftaj.
Yeah, Taftaj. I post sexy pictures online and have political discussions where I have incredibly harsh, intense eugenics takes, like that poor people should be able to choose when they have children. So if you want like more super controversial stuff like that, definitely follow me.
Salty.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Turk.
Yeah, I'm Turk. I do science and tech stuff, so I appreciate being on the panel. Glad we could have some good conversation. I actually agreed with points that Scarlett and Genevieve had, and Logan, I appreciate the feedback. But I gotta say, Malcolm, if you're gonna call yourself a Catholic and not adhere to the catechism, and you're gonna not adhere to anything that your denomination of the faith adheres to,
for fuck's sake,
you are not a Catholic, my friend. You are a not Catholic, so sorry, man.
Gatekeeping.
I'll detransition from Catholicism right now. Thank you for changing my mind.
This man used his whole closing statement to tell him he's not Catholic.
I'm gonna throw it over to True.
It is a bitch maneuver.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely.
I'm sorry I'm not trained in D's anymore. I used to be a lot more less emotional.
Trained in D's
but
nuts.
It's an emotional topic for me. It's a lot easier to get through to 3 months pregnant than you would think, the way they count it. So that's why I think birth control is really important, no matter what. Because even if you don't think you want a kid, by 3 months, sometimes if you're stressed and you're in denial and all this shit, anyways, whatever. I'm not getting into it, but just be careful, everybody. And thanks for having me. You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, and most every social media you can think of. So look me up. And I'm happy to have met everybody and to have got to hang out. I'll probably hang out with Taj if you guys keep talking, but I need to take my dog out real quick. So.
Okay. You guys all have a good one. Thank you so much for coming on this Friday for another edition of the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. I'm going to go pass out now. You all have a good one.
Thanks, Dylan.
Peace.
Later.
had to put the window capture back on. No, hang on. Activate. Boom. There we go. Well, that was a whole ass thing, was it not? Oh, fucking hell. Kevin won. Fucking true. Hopefully that was okay. How did we think that went? Hopefully that was vaguely reasonable. I think I got some good points across. Yeah. Rory Cats is a cute baby cat. True. Fucking true. Yeah, how do you think I went? Were there any points I didn't hit on that you wanted me to? Anything like that? Any critical notes? I'll read out some stuff while you get your ideas in, because I don't, I can't really do these when we're going live. Thank you to, where did we get to? I read that one, didn't I? So, thank you Dank Prole for resubscribing with 5 months, and they say, I bet it won't be that quick. Don't know what that's in reference to. It was technically 2 hours ago though, so, Thank you, The Smooth Brain, for following. Thank you, Miss Mortician 1986 for gifting a sub to Smooth Brain. Nice. Thank you to Jezebel11, I Love Spiller, Vitor Benedetti, Hugo, no, not Hugo, Diego, Reboot Computer, Rewardian Common Cut, and Northbound Train for following. Thank you to Hugh Parks for subscribing on YouTube. That's a nice little one. Thank you to Insomnia Noir for gifting a sub to Avery Always. Much love to you. Oh, that was about Taftag's intro. Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, no, it wasn't that short, was it? Taftag is seriously moulding. Ish. Good. I think she needs to. Look, I didn't want to be that rude at the end there with the is she a useful idiot bit, but like they are calling her a groomer. They're calling all trans people, all LGBT people, like groomer and pedophile and blah blah blah. Like they're doing that right now. They're doing that. And she's aiding and abetting this nonsense. Anyway. Yeah, Malcolm did well. I liked Malcolm. I was unaware of Malcolm's existence before this, but yeah. They seemed like a good egg. What's this? Kev was good to see on the Hippy Drippy again. But I could have sworn that they debated the repeal of Roe vs. Wade a couple of weeks ago. True. Although to be fair, it was like a month ago that the thing was released. So that's understandable that it gets debated in that way. If you saw my hair grow now, you'd know I'm not well groomed. Hey-o. Who is Malcolm? Malcolm was the trans dude that was on the panel. They were pretty cool. Not gunning for you now. Doesn't mean they know. Exactly, yeah. The Republicans are coming for these rights. That's what they're doing. So if you're still supporting like Republican causes or whatever, you're aiding and abetting your own disenfranchisement, having your rights stripped away from you. I wasn't expecting Taftag's free market of law argument. Doesn't make good laws. Just move around other states anytime to make law. Exactly. Yeah. I wasn't expecting the eugenics. The eugenics was a bit. I'm also proud we got angry at Taftag for that misgendering transfer. Well, Avery Always. I won't tolerate that nonsense. If I'd seen anyone doing misgendering or transphobia towards anyone, like I don't care. Like there are loads of trans people who are absolute fucking garbage. Like Blair White, for instance. They're awful bastards. But I won't put up with people misgendering them or being transphobic. That's not at all what this channel is about. If you do that shit, you get fucking, at the very least, timed out and warned. If it's on the lower end of the situation, and if it's too much, then you'll just get fucking banned. I'm not putting up with that shit. There are plenty of very easy ways that one can attack Taftaj's stupid fucking ideas. I will not put up with you being transphobic towards them, though. The fetus would be considered a state if it was conceived in. Exactly, that's the weirdest thing of if it's conceived in a certain state. So it matters where you come. What state did you spunk in? Depends on what laws. What the fuck is that about? Because what about... Hang on, here's one for you. If it's about conception, and you're on, like, let's say, you're in a Winnebago, travelling across from one of the coasts to the other coasts, how do you know? And the person has sex, the man ejaculates into the lady, as is romantic. How do you know at what point, in which state, the insemination actually took place? What about if you go to the Four Corners? You know the Four Corner states? And you're on that thing where it's the Four Corners? Where they meet, there's like a thing. What about if you fuck on that? In what state were you inseminated? Think about it, people. Plenty of ways to fuck with this law. Split the baby into 4. It's the only answer. Anyway, if you're new here, you can hit the follow button. I would be very grateful if you would. It helps the channel and all of that shit. Why don't we celebrate conception days if life begins at conception? Exactly. It's very true.
Finally, those capitalist pigs will pay
thank you, Spongy Lord, with 200 bits, who says, Sir, I beg for a moment of your time. You've taken the Doomer pill, I understand. But, my brother, have you forgotten the mole pill? Great debate, sir. Exactly, look, you can't be too Doomer for too long with moles. Moles are around. Also, there's this. Yep. Bookmarks. Right. It's a capybara surrounded by turtles. And the greatest tweet I think I've ever seen. And you could have it all, my empire of turt. It's beautiful. Just... Oh, it's beautiful. A link to what? What's I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, I'm gonna fuck off. But it's obviously long gone midnight at this point, as is always the way in these instances. Thank you everyone for all of your support. Thank you to all the new people who followed. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the Kevolution. But I am tired, so I'm going to bed. Should we find someone to kick everyone over to on the Twitch machines? Who is going on the Twitch machines? Taftage is going, but that no. No. Amy C3? Riverboat Jack? Okay, here we go, Riverboat. Go and say hello to Riverboat Jack. A trans person who isn't selling out other trans people. See? Awesome. And I'll be back later today with Christo for the 24-hour delayed, or 22-hour, 23-hour delayed happy hour on Saturday. Where we'll be watching some shit. I don't know. Honestly, I have checked out. I am on the beach, motherfuckers. Okay. Thank you all for listening and watching. You people are amazing. No pass around.